women's economic empowerment. And it is therefore my great pleasure to invite Mr. Kaveh Zahedi, Deputy Executive Secretary, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, to deliver his opening remarks. Please, Mr. Zahedi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chane, and Mr. Kung Phuoc, the Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN for the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community and good friend. Excellencies, distinguished participants from ASEAN countries, from many of our partner organizations, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the Web Forum on Enhancing Women's Economic Empowerment in ASEAN countries. On behalf of ESCAP, I extend my gratitude to all of you for your participation in this event. We're very pleased to co-organize this forum in cooperation with the ASEAN Committee on Women and the ASEAN Secretariat. Both are strong partners in championing women's equality and empowerment in the region. 2020 marks an important milestone for our community, the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action. About a year ago, countries of Asia Pacific came together in a way to take stock of collective progress in the implementation of the Beijing Platform and to reiterate their commitment to completing the unfinished business. The Asia Pacific Beijing Plus 25 Declaration that was adopted outlines key actions by governments and stakeholders to close gender gaps and realize women's rights. The declaration was really a very important achievement for our region, but it was by no means the end of our efforts. The task for us now is to develop specific recommendations and actions that help accelerate the implementation of the renewed commitments adopted at the Asia Pacific Ministerial Conference last November. Implementation and acceleration are both vital. While Asia Pacific has made progress in the empowerment of women and girls over the past 25 years, we all know that much work remains. Even before the pandemic, women's economic empowerment was a faraway goal across the region. Despite numerous measures to promote women's economic participation, the gender gap between male and female labor force participation in our region is 32%. While women's labor force participation has declined from 55% in 1995 to 44% in 2020. So the trajectory is indeed in the wrong direction. The challenges have now been magnified and the progress made threatened by the COVID-19 pandemic. Indeed, the United Nations Secretary General recently warned that the devastating social and economic impact on women and girls is reversing the progress on gender equality. Women workers and entrepreneurs have suffered a disproportionate loss of economic security, particularly migrants and women working in the informal sector. So how do we address the glaring gender gaps in economic participation and empower women economically? First and foremost is addressing the disproportionate burden of unpaid care and domestic work which falls on women. In the Asia Pacific region, women do up to 4 times as much unpaid care work at home as men. With the scourge of COVID-19 and lockdown measures, women have had to take on additional domestic work, including homeschooling of children and taking care of the sick family members on top of their usual responsibilities as primary caregivers in the family. Such burden has obviously put enormous constraint on women's opportunities to engage in economic activities, including gainful employment. ESCAP's new research on promising practices and policy tries to help to showcase initiatives that seek to recognize the value of care work, to redistribute and reduce the care burden through increased investment in national care systems, including affordable, quality childcare and elderly care services, as well as gender-responsive social protection programs. Your insights and experience will inform the strategy that we are formulating in supporting Asia-Pacific countries to address this critical issue for gender equality. Second is supporting women's entrepreneurship as a catalyst for women's economic empowerment and sustainable economic growth. Again, our research has shown that women entrepreneurs face complex barriers to starting up and growing their businesses. Such obstacles range from lack of access to finance and technology to low levels of financial and digital literacy, as well as negative gender stereotypes that still persist. And this is, of course, further compounded by, as mentioned earlier, the enormous amount of unpaid care work that fall on the collective shoulders of women in our region. ESCAP's Catalyzing Women's Entrepreneurship program is addressing many of these challenges. We're working with governments to improve policies and regulations, and with financial institutions and the private sector to invest in women entrepreneurs and to provide more innovative financial and digital solutions to them. Enhancing women's entrepreneurship is a building block for inclusive and sustainable economies in the Asia-Pacific region. Research in 3 ASEAN countries found that women business owners hired 17% more women compared with male business owners. Women also tend to use their incomes more productively. One study shows that women devoted 90 cents of every dollar earned on their families, including on children's education, on health and nutrition, compared to some 30 to 40% by men. So in this regard, we are truly encouraged by the willingness of our partners to engage in these new initiatives with us at ESCAP. And I'm especially heartened by really the dynamic leadership shown by the ASEAN community, by the ASEAN Committee on Women and the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on MSMEs in promoting women's economic empowerment. Here at ESCAP, we really are fully committed to partnership with you and to take forward this important agenda in collaboration, of course, with our member states, with civil society, UN agencies, and other stakeholders. Together, and only together, we're working towards an equal future for all. So I wish us all a very fruitful dialogue today and look forward to receiving some useful insights and inputs and recommendations from around this virtual table for advancing women's economic empowerment and implementing the Asia-Pacific Declaration on Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment over the next 5 years. Thank you again for joining us, and back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sahidi, for your most cogent opening address. Dear participants, I am pleased to now invite His Excellency Kung Puak, Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN for the Asian Socio-Cultural Community, to deliver his opening remarks. Please, Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chani and Mr. Kawe Zahedi, Deputy Executive Secretary, my good friend, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, Madam Haja No Ashikin Binti Haji Johari, Permanent Secretary, Communities and Culture, Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport, Brunei Darussalam, Chair, ASEAN Committee on Women, representative of the ASEAN Committee on Women, representative of other ASEAN sectoral bodies, representative of ASEAN Women Entrepreneur Network, representative of ASEAN Coordinating Committee on MSME, and also representative of a network of experts on inclusive entrepreneurship for ASEAN, representative from Development Partner Organization, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon. I'm honored to be with all of you today as we hold this web forum on enhancing women economic empowerment in ASEAN country. I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific and the ASEAN Committee on Women for the collaboration for such an opportune events. Realizing gender equalities and women economic empowerment have always been a priority agenda of ASEAN across the 3 ASEAN community pillars who are collaboratively working together in advancing and promoting the rise of all women and girls in the region. Reaffirming unwavering commitment to the cause ASEAN has forged ahead with women economic empowerment as a pivotal approach in closing gender gaps and ensuring no woman and girl will be left behind. In 2017, the action agenda on mainstreaming women economic empowerment in ASEAN has been adopted. The action agenda encourages the ASEAN member state to strengthen innovation, ensure gender responsive trade and inclusive business, and human capital development for women and girls by investing on concrete measures to address the barriers that impede maximizing women's full economic potentials. At the ASEAN Leaders Special Session at the 36th ASEAN Summit on Women Empowerment in the Digital Age, held in June 2020, ASEAN leaders underscore their commitment to leverage strategic initiative on gender equalities and women empowerment by improving women access to opportunity that will enable them to respond to emerging challenges. In this regard, ASEAN recognizes the unprecedented impact of COVID-19 pandemic, which has heightened the risks and vulnerabilities of women and girls due to loss of employment and economic livelihood, inaccessibility of basic services, and increased incident of gender-based violence. In this regard, henceforth, the first Women Leaders Summit held on 12 November 2020, key action and recommendation were put forward on how to mitigate the gender impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. The summit paved the way to place women leadership and contribution at the heart of the recovery effort, especially under the umbrella of the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. Global scenario reveals that labor force participation rate for women of all ages in 2018 is an intractable challenge at 48.5%, 26.5 percentage point below that of men. In ASEAN, the unemployment rate for women of all ages is recorded with percentage ranging from 1 to 10.7 percentage across the region. With COVID-19 reversing most of our gains on gender equality and women economic empowerment, we need to continue to work concertedly to foster capacities of women and girls, to make them more resilient and better prepared to face future risks and shock by providing them the needed access to quality education and opportunity for upskilling and reskilling over the life course while keeping up with the fast pace of technological advancement and digital transformations. This should be done simultaneously with other relevant efforts on gender equalities that would address other intersectionalities issues such as class inequality, race, age, marginalization, and disabilities, among others. We must strive to remove multiple barriers to economic empowerment of women, particularly social and cultural norms, inaccessibility of gender-responsive services, insufficient social infrastructure, and invisibility of care and domestic work that have continued to impede women's full realization of their potentials. To this, I commend UNESCOP and the ASEAN Committee on Women to convene this platform for us to dialogue and deliberate on the next practical step to realize economic empowerment for all women. I also would like to acknowledge your support from my colleague at the ASEAN Secretariat. I look forward to the success of this activity, to get the good practices, and to the realistic and workable action that will surely follow. On that note, I wish you a fruitful deliberation, and I hope that we will continue our collaborative initiative on advancing gender equalities and women economic empowerment with conviction and in solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Excellency Kong Kwak, for shedding light on the importance of advancing gender equality and women's economic empowerment in Asia, indeed, to make it a community of opportunities for all. Now, may I invite Ms. Chai Chai, Chief of the Gender Equality and Social Inclusion Section of the Social Development Division of SCAP, to make the overview presentation. Ms. Chai Chai, please. The floor is yours.
Excellencies, dear participants, I'm pleased to provide an overview of the meeting programs, as well as on the background and key issues related to gender equality in ASEAN countries. The overall objective of this web forum is to facilitate the exchange of knowledge, good practices, and lessons learned in implementing the Beijing Platform for Action, with a focus on women's economic empowerment. The forum aims to identify good practices in participatory gender-responsive approaches to the design, implementation, and monitoring of women's economic empowerment measures, including cross-sectoral measures, institutional coordination, public-private partnerships. This is why this forum has brought together key stakeholders from relevant ministries and national women's machineries, as well as women's business and inclusive entrepreneurship networks in ASEAN countries. The recommendations from this forum will inform the priority actions to be undertaken by ASEAN countries, ESCAP, and development partners in 2021 and beyond to follow up on the Beijing Plus 25 declaration adopted by the governments in the Asia-Pacific region. Before we go into the meeting program, allow me to briefly share with you the broad context for this forum. As you have heard from our Deputy Executive Secretary, 2020 marked the 25-year anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action, the trailblazing global commitment to gender equality. Since 1995, for every 5 years, there would be a global and a regional review on the progress in implementing the platform. In November last year, representatives from 54 countries and 166 civil society organizations participated in the Asia-Pacific Ministerial Conference, convened by ESCAP in collaboration with the UN Women to conduct the Beijing Plus 25 review. As a key outcome of the Beijing Plus 25 review, the Asia-Pacific Declaration on Advancing Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment was adopted by ESCAP member states. As shown on the screen, the declaration covers 8 priority areas for action. These priorities were informed by an extensive review and input from governments and civil society actors. It calls upon member states to ensure inclusive development and decent work, gender-responsive social protection systems, public services, and infrastructure, and address the harmful gender stereotypes and violence that continue to hold back and even threaten the lives of women and girls. Also, promote social dialogue and accountability for gender equality, inclusive peace, and the responsive climate action. Lastly, the declaration highlighted the need to strengthen national statistical systems and data collection, and calls for partnership and collaboration among all actors across the region. While the ASEAN region has demonstrated economic dynamism in the past decade, women's labor force participation in ASEAN countries is still trailing behind men, with gender gaps ranging from 10 to 30 percentage points. And women earn less for doing the same work as men, with the pay gap reaching 25% in some countries. For women who have a job, they are more likely to work in lower paid and informal sectors. Social protection schemes rarely have provisions for those working in the informal sectors. So women are particularly at risk of losing their jobs and having no safety net to fall back on. This exacerbates the persistent inequalities and barriers to women's economic empowerment. Based on the time use data, it is clear that women carry a much higher share of unpaid domestic and care work than men across the region. On an average day, women spend about up to 3 times more on unpaid care work than men in ASEAN countries. The long hours that women put into domestic work reduce their opportunities to undertake paid work and other activities outside home. Currently, there are more than 60 million women entrepreneurs in ASEAN countries. Women entrepreneurs, however, face complex barriers to start up and grow their businesses, including gender biases in navigating the administrative system, lack of access to capital and financial services, and opportunities for skills enhancement. As our Deputy Executive Secretary has shared with you, ESCAP's regional program on women's entrepreneurship aims to address these challenges through creating an enabling entrepreneurial system to improve policies and regulations, develop innovative financial and digital solutions to support women entrepreneurs in partnership with governments, financial institutions, and the private sector. As we know, entrepreneurship is a key catalyst for women's economic empowerment and sustainable economic growth. ESCAP plans to support all ASEAN countries to unleash women's creative energy and economic potentials. Against this backdrop, this forum has been designed to address the issues that are critical to supporting women's economic empowerment, including unpaid care work and women's entrepreneurship. The forum has two substantive sessions. The first session will focus on the care economy, and the second session will focus on women's entrepreneurship. Both are critical aspects of women's economic empowerment. For each session, experts and representatives from government and the ASEAN network will present progress and share their insights. And the panelists will be happy to address specific questions and comments from the participants. Please note that we will take a group photo right after this brief overview. Now, I will just briefly mention a few points concerning the meeting guidelines. Please make sure your camera is turned off and your microphone is muted when you are not speaking. For questions or comments, please provide your full name and affiliations first, and enter it along with your questions into the chat box. The Secretariat will prepare a meeting report and share with you after the meeting. This is a brief overview of the meeting program. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to our discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chai Chai, for the presentation and for setting the scene today for our discussion this afternoon. Before going into session 1, may I please request the participants to open your cameras to take a group photo. This group photo will be facilitated by our colleagues at the ASEAN Secretariat. Casey, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chani. So we're waiting for everyone to turn their cameras on, and I will count to 3, and we will take 2 pictures. I see that most participants have their cameras on. Smile, and 1, 2, 3. And our second picture, 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. Over to you, Chani.
Thank you very much, Casey. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, we will now go straight into session 1, Women's Economic Empowerment and the Care Economy. The session will focus on issues of unpaid care and domestic work in relation to promoting women's economic empowerment. It is now my pleasure to invite Dr. Sita Sumrit, Assistant Director and Head of Division of the Poverty Eradication and Gender Division, Human Development Directorate, Asian Socio-Cultural Community Department of the ASEAN Secretariat to moderate the session. Dr. Sita, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Shani, for giving the floor to me to moderate this very exciting and important session. As everyone here is aware, ASEAN is working to address the issue of unpaid care work. Of course, it's not a new issue, but it's considered an emerging issue to be addressed at the policy level. So for this session 1, as Shani has mentioned, we will be discussing on the women's economic empowerment in the context of women's unpaid care and domestic work. Of course, there's a need to recognize, but recognize is not enough, but also to reduce the unpaid care work. We have seen from the presentation of Chai Chai that women have been bearing such responsibilities for so long. So we need to also reduce the unpaid care work. For the panelists for this session, we will have a very enriching dialogue and discussion and exchange. Given that we will have the panelists also from the civil society organizations as well as from the government. So we will hear the implementation and lesson learned at the country level, also from the government perspectives, as well as from the research perspective, as there will be a presenter from SCAP to share with us the commissioned study from SCAP side on the unpaid care work. Also, we will hear from the private sector as well on how the stakeholders in the private sector address women's economic empowerment and unpaid care work. So without further ado, from my end, I would like to invite the panelists, the first panelist to take the floor. just to avoid mispronouncing the name and apologize in advance, I would like to invite Ms. Leah Payut from the Oxfam Philippines to present on the country level initiatives to advance the empowerment of women through addressing the care economy. The floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Wanna check my sounds?
Yes, we can hear you.
Very good. Okay, good afternoon again. And we're so glad, in behalf of Oxfam, we're so glad for the invite and this opportunity for us to share our experience in this discussion on unpaid care and domestic work. So again, my name is Leia Anadon Payod. I am the Resilience Portfolio Manager of Oxfam in the Philippines. And I also managed a multi-country project around women economic empowerment and care. Okay, so moving on to my first slide. I prepared, actually, let me start by a question. So I prepared a question for everyone, and I would appreciate if you can write in the chat box. Well, I cannot see my chat box at the moment, but I would appreciate if you can write it down, your answer. Now, perhaps Shani can help me monitor the answers. So my first question is, what care work did you do yesterday? Did I see an answer already? In the chat box. Is there any answer already?
So far, Leah, we have no responses coming through. We have one from Dr. Sita. She was feeding her cats.
Oh yeah, that's good. Okay, let it come through. What care work did you do yesterday? Just one word. You do laundry. You cook. Is it coming, Shani?
Yes, it is. Would you like me to read some of them out? A selection? Some
Yeah,
homework?
yeah, please. Yeah.
Homework
Good.
with my daughter. There are some who might not have done any care work. Cooking, feeding, and reading to my kids. Cooking,
Wow, great,
cleaning, doing laundry.
great.
A lot
Thank
of
you,
meals
thank you.
have been prepared.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that here. And my next question is, what work do you wish you could have done more yesterday? What work do you wish you could have done more yesterday? Did it coming through, Shani?
Well, someone would have liked to catch a few more hours of sleep. Cooking,
Okay, yeah,
cleaning,
that's rest.
leisure
Okay.
time, taking a break to read.
Okay.
A lot of
Okay.
avid readers amongst us.
Okay, so that's actually a combination of well-being, more rest, and still do care work. No, thank you so much. And that's actually that's a very, I mean, just wanted to set the tone that the core of our discussion today is understanding, learning on women economic empowerment and what are the barriers of achieving that. No, in the context of the Philippines, based on our experience, we actually we also ask some of our women in the community on what they do and what care did they do yesterday, and you will be amazed of so much lists and of course more time that they need to do that. uh, for Oxfam, we actually we define the unpaid care and domestic work as direct care of person. That actually includes caring of children, elderly, cleaning, cooking, washing and mending clothes, and all others. And as mentioned earlier by our speakers, the unpaid care and domestic work is often heavy, inefficient, and unequally distributed. And providing care falls disproportionately to the shoulders of women and girls, thus limiting their time to learn, to earn, or to take part of any political and social activities of their choice. So we actually put an emphasis on the of their choice because we wanted to to have that empowerment feel of women on to decide, to make a decision. As in my screen, you can see the graphic. No, this is what Oxfam and our partners did last year when we had our project on women economic empowerment and care, and we tried to put a monetary value of the unpaid care of the house tasks. So amazingly, this will actually the cost was also identified by our communities, by the communities that we work with, and amazingly, it will cost around 1,700 USD per month. The work that is being done by a majority of women and men, women and girls, and some men uh, at the household. So amazingly, if we are to put a monetary value, it has cost. Obviously, it has cost. Now, we tried to ask the same question, the two questions that I've said earlier. We tried that to ask in some of the women. And the story of Ruth, the mother of 7, which is also a housewife in a poor communities in Eastern Samar in the Philippines, we were moved by her story. So Shani would like to request to play the video. I'm going to stop my screen now.
Full-time ang pagiging ina, lalo na kung 7 ang anak mo tulad ko. Walang katapusang trabaho, ang pag-aalaga ng mga bata. Kung may oras at opportunity ako, gusto kong magtrabaho o negosyo.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Let me share my screen again. Can you see my screen now? Yeah?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah. So the story of Ruth actually is very relevant to majority or most of the poor communities here in the Philippines, even if you are in urban setting or in rural setting. So motherhood is a full-time job for Ruth, and well, Ruth is very proud on what she does. No, but if Ruth had more time, however, she would wanted to venture or run her own business and more time for herself. No. In 2017, Oxfam, together with our partners, conducted or commissioned a household care survey. This is actually conducted in the 5 provinces in the Philippines, wherein we found out that the research shows that women spend an average of 6.5 hours a day on primary care. When we say primary care, is just you're just only doing laundry, or you're just only taking care of the children. And this is almost 3 times more hours than men, including supervision of dependents and secondary activities. So this actually, if you are going to sum it all together, the hours spent on care responsibility takes up 6 to 12 hours per day. So you can see here in the graphics the difference on how men and women spend on unpaid care. In May 2020, just a few months ago, Oxfam also joined with our partners here in the Philippines to commission a rapid gender assessment in times of COVID-19. And we are very particular as well to look into how unpaid care work is affected or impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, especially that most of the family members are at home. No? So one striking research result shows that solo parents, particularly mothers, no, solo mothers and women from poor communities spend more than 5 hours a day on domestic work during COVID-19 pandemic. So if you can see, there is almost similar pattern, but it's just that during COVID-19 pandemic, it's source high. It really increases. Now, what are the consequences if we are not to address the unpaid care and domestic work? So for Oxfam and our partners, we see that heavy and unequal care work traps women in a self-reinforcing cycle of time and income poverty throughout their lives. So we have these researches that shows that extreme poverty rates would increase, especially among women, as they are engaged more on unpaid care. Girls who are taking on unpaid care as well tend to take up their time more spending at home and taking care of unpaid care work and skipping school. No, they don't necessarily go to school. And globally, 42% of women of working age are outside of the paid labor force compared with the 6% of men because of unpaid care responsibilities. Now, what are other consequences? So our study shows that unpaid care has a relation to gender-based violence, especially that 20 to 40% of women that we've interviewed said that they were being beaten, there were criticism, they're being mocked, because of the failure to do the care work. And also women who are exposed to intimate partner violence are employed in higher numbers in casual or part-time work, and their earnings is 60% lower compared to women who do not experience such violence. And of course, this is also very much relevant to the well-being of women. The one that we've interviewed, 2/3 of them said that they experience illness, injury because of spending too much time on unpaid care. So those are the realities. But the question posed for us is that can we do something about this? Can this be actionable? Is there some way that we can address this? So far for Oxfam and our partners in the Philippines, we've done already efforts around implementing direct project that addresses recognition, reduction, redistribution, and representation of unpaid care work. We also do advocacy, policy advocacy. We have campaigning for social norms change. The two very popular campaigns that we did online is the I Love You campaign. I Love You is I love you if you coined it, but it's actually laba in the Philippines is doing laundry. So it's changing social norms and behavior and perceptions towards unpaid care, especially doing more time on engaging with our men or our fathers. How I Care campaign as well is another popular campaign in the Philippines, particularly engaging more men, and that sorry, I was caught. Yeah. So research and knowledge sharing, we do that as well. And then implementation of our work together with our partners. So we already partner with civil society organizations, women's rights organization, government agencies. Philippine Commission on Women is also our partner. The Bureau of Corrections with Leyte Regional Prison, because we partner with them, especially on the integration in their module for the social norms change for those persons deprived of liberty, as they will be part of their social norms change and discussion and support as well on their curriculum. No? And also we work with local government units and private sector, so Unilever and PR companies in our social media campaigning. So some achievements is that we see that if we are to combine WASH, building water system, putting it closer to the communities, together with awareness raising campaign or social norms campaign, it will really put more impact. And Oxfam and partners, we already reached over 120 people in Visayas and Mindanao. And then again, integration of WASH, the time labor saving equipment is like washing machine or rice cooker or cooking stove, laundry facilities. It will reduce the time spent strength of women and girls on unpaid care work. And also working with care champions. So there are men who are our care champions at the moment and continuing the conversation on unpaid care in the communities and in their families. And we also integrate in our humanitarian program. Oxfam Philippines, we have our cash for care work in humanitarian response, because as you know, in most of our humanitarian responses, it's only cash for work, but actually it deprives the inclusion of those who are left at home taking care of the sick or the elderly, and they cannot go out to participate in any cash for work activity. Also, again, the communications campaign that we had, it reaches already over 30 million, the I Love You campaign, and How I Care campaign, which is over 22 million reach as well. So this is engaging more men. We had this gamification in the social media, wherein the fathers or their neighbors posted pictures of men doing care at home in the times of pandemic. So it increases really a more conversation online on how men can be actively part of this campaign. And in terms of local policy, we work with the local government unit, and 8 of the municipalities have already enacted new legislation. It's actually local laws on spend or how to appropriate their gender and development fund for unpaid care work programs, no, addressing the issues on unpaid care, like investing more budget allocation for building water system, providing time labor saving equipment, something like that. And of course, again, we reach new stakeholders, like for example, the Bureau of Corrections for the training and awareness raising for persons deprived of liberty or men in penal system. So there are impact that we see, with this intervention. So we see that women have benefited from water and laundry infrastructure, spending 2 hours less per day. And for men involved in social norms, reported 3.3 hours a day spending on unpaid care. And also their benefit on some other activities of their choice. So I think this is my last slide. This is just wanted to emphasize that men are our very important and relevant partner for this advocacy, men as care champion. So I would like to show another video. Shan, if you can please show the video. I'll stop my screen now.
Una, waray ko hadto panginlabot han mga buruhaton na balay. Ang importante na kumita la ko ng kwarta. Pero yan na, nahibaroan ko nga kinhanglanon ko, bumuligan akon asawa, sugad itong paghugas, paglaba, ug iba pa. Sa pagsasama talaga, kinakailangan yung mag-asawa ay dapat magtulungan.
Okay, thank you, Shan. And yes, this actually affirms that both husband, wife, or partners should into this together. So that is why the hashtag for this initiative is care work is teamwork. It's a teamwork of all the members in the family, and the care dialogues facilitate actually a discussion between partners, husband, wife, and the members of the family, the children. So Marino, Kuya Marino, we call him Kuya Marino, is a fisherman from the Philippines that shares care responsibilities at home, but still believe that many men still has that norms or social norms, that perspective that care work is only the work for women. So again, care work is everybody's responsibility. Care work is teamwork, and this includes government making care count by acknowledging the amount of care work billions of women and girls do and the value that it brings to our society. So to my last slide is that just a note that why focus on unpaid care and domestic work? Again, this is fundamental to human development and gender equality. It's a public and development issue. It's no longer a private issue. And unrecognized heavy and unequal workloads for women and girls. There is a global and regional commitment, particularly SDG 5.4, no? And specific on SDG 5.4.1, that which is an indicator around counting our unpaid care work initiatives. And lastly, women and girls have more choice and benefit from political, economic, and social participation. So again, I think that's my last slide. Maraming salamat po. Thank you very much. Let's make care count. Care work is teamwork, and care matters. Thank you very much, and good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Ms. Leah, for, of course, a very interactive session, making us reflecting on what we have just done in terms of the care work. I don't know if it was paid. And also to address again the importance of make care count, as well as engaging men and boys in this work that we are doing, and that's also one of the mandates of ASEAN moving forward with promoting gender equality. Without further ado, I think we are still within the set time and schedule. So I would like to invite the second speaker, Ms. Minarshi Krishnan from the IDS, Institute of Development Studies, to present on the COVID-19 and the care economy from the ESCAP Commission study. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sita. And I'll just quickly share my screen now. Okay, so I hope that's come up. So I'll be speaking to all of you about the study that we're working from IDS in the UK and ESCAP on looking at government's policy responses to women's unpaid care work in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. So already in our opening comments for this session, and a very interesting presentation by Leah from Oxfam Philippines has showcased to you the human interest angle of how unpaid care work is absolutely foundational to all of the women's economic empowerment. And we know that the COVID-19 is not just a health crisis, but a socio-economic crisis. It has exacerbated pre-existing inequalities and had very differentiated effects on women and girls. Now, apart from the income loss and the loss of livelihood and paid work opportunities, we're also seeing an intensification of care work. And I think Leah's presentation brought that out really beautifully. One of the things that I want to highlight in this, without repeating what has already been said, is the absence of access to state provisions and care infrastructure. So the water collection, the fuel collection, the requirement for food provisioning that women have already had to do, which was already very high, has been further intensified in the pandemic, and new challenges have been created. So for example, the sanitization and hygiene measures that need to be followed, the social distancing measures that need to be followed, make queuing up for provisions and resources more complicated. The almost militarized lockdown measures in many countries have also made it more challenging for women to access grocery markets or access transportation and therefore be able to provide care. A reduction in health services has led to more home care having to be provided, both to COVID infected and to other dependents and sick and disabled and elderly people in the family. In addition to this, the school closures, as well as absence of the school feeding program, for example, that governments were earlier offering, have led to an increased intensification of childcare, food provisioning, and home education. And all this comes in the face of an absence of support, you know, the kind of infrastructure, community networks, family, friends, grandparents that you earlier could tap into. With the new reality of the world under COVID, that's not possible. So with this gender cum care lens, we were really looking to see in our research what have been some of the care sensitive policy measures. And this is really the analytical framework that we followed, but I'll focus your attention on two main things. One is that while governments have responded with macroeconomic policies, migration, labor, social protection measures, recognition that care is foundational still needs to be seen. And I really want us to discuss this green box, which is the nature of differentiated care policy responses, because we know that women have very differentiated needs and responsibilities. There's an entire sphere of childcare, entire sphere of domestic work, entire sphere of elder, sick, disabled care. And so the four categories of policies that we've really been tracking and mapping, one is care infrastructure to do with water, electricity, fuel, utilities, food provisioning. The second is care-related social protection. So though there have been increases in income transfers and supports for vulnerable populations, are they care sensitive? Do they account for families with children? Do they account for pregnant lactating mothers? Do they account for disabled and sick people? So those are the kind of social protection answers we would call care sensitive. Then care services refers to obviously the provision of services by the community, by the state, or by the market. So for example, has institutional childcare and creches been disrupted due to the pandemic? Has access to health services, social, sexual and reproductive health services, disabled care, has access of home paid carers who come in to look after the elderly being disrupted? For example, we know that women are 70% of the essential workers in the pandemic on the front lines of healthcare, but who's taking care of their unpaid domestic and childcare needs in the absence of institutional care services? And finally, the category of care-related employment policies, which refers to increased sick pay or increased number of holidays for, say, workers who are parents or who have small children, or increased social insurance, health insurance, subsidies for workers who had to reduce their hours for caring responsibilities. So really keeping these four categories of care policies in our mind, we've mapped across the thousands of measures that governments have taken across the world. And here briefly, I'll refer to the widely sort of followed UNDP, UN Women Global Gender Response Tracker. It has about more than 2,500 measures across various categories. But if you notice that what you would call gender sensitive measures, which is focusing on violence against women, focusing on women's economic security and unpaid care work, are just 40%. And within those also, violence against women forms 70 to 75% of the response. The same pattern is seen in Asia Pacific countries that our SCAP is looking at. So that brings us to the real uncomfortable realization that unpaid care work is still a very minuscule proportion of the measures that governments have taken to respond to the pandemic. We found only 177 measures at national and subnational levels. And as the chart on the right-hand side shows, most of these are concentrated in social protection transfers, many of them being one-off relief measures, one-time cash payments, or temporary subsidies or temporary food provision like food packets, food grains, utility waivers to bills being given. So the fact that the pandemic has become protracted now, has been ongoing, and also that when all four categories of care policies have not been addressed, we're not structurally and systemically looking still at women's unpaid care work is really the key message. However, we also wanted to really look at not just focusing on what's not happened, but really saying what are the promising practices. And this is really the forum to discuss those. And I don't have time to go into all of the measures that we found across countries and sub-regions of SCAP, but just want to flag off, for example, several good practices that we observed from the Republic of Korea, whether it was relating to employment of workers who have young children, extra subsidies to employers who are giving benefits to the employees like pregnant women, or extra number of days of paid leave days to working parents, or provisions for sickness of workers being subsidized by the companies or the state. In Australia, we find very elaborate childcare as well as home care package for senior citizens, taking on the testing costs, the recovery costs, the quarantine costs of families. And in Russian Federation, we found a lot of emphasis on maternity capital grants, increase in payments to families which have children under the age of 16, one-time payments for families who have children under the age of 3, increase in existing childcare allowance. So a host of measures that really can act as examples for the rest of the region to follow. Specifically for this forum, of course, the ASEAN countries is of interest, and we can see that Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Indonesia, in fact, each of the countries has had their own set of measures. But what is important is what is the interaction of care and gender. While some measures may be care sensitive, they miss out the aspect of women's unpaid and domestic work and how that has been intensified. Or if some of the measures focus on violence against women and are gender specific, they miss out on the care dimension. So really combining these two is what is the ask from governments, and how can we build back better is really the question that all of us are grappling with. And I would say here, 3 key elements is: 1, to recognize that care is foundational to societies, to economies, to livelihoods. 2nd is to keep in mind the differentiated care needs that women have. Only then can we move from a double burden to a double boom. What we say that, we, instead of making paid work and unpaid care work as an either or, if you can create infrastructure, create services of care that the state provides or the market provides, then both men and women can more easily combine their paid and unpaid care work responsibilities. So we need both a care sensitive and a gender sensitive national policy and programming approach. And that's really what we're asking governments to do, to use this as an opportunity to create more women-focused and unpaid care work and domestic work focused policy measures, include women in the recovery, have more data like time use surveys, unpaid care work surveys coming up. Those have really taken a hit in the pandemic, and look at forward trends on aging, on single parent households, on female-headed households, all of them in a sort of holistic picture. So I just want to conclude by saying that while COVID has put a very long shadow on the world really, and has threatened gains that feminists have made in 25 years, it has also really brought care front and center into the conversation. And this is really an opportune time to build back better by creating more care sensitive policy measures. And this is the opportunity for ASEAN countries and governments around Asia Pacific to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very informative presentation. I think, again, we are reminded that it's not enough just to address the unpaid care work, but it has to be addressed structurally and systematically. Also, there is a need for infrastructures and care facilities for women and men to be able to undertake the care work, as well as for the post-COVID-19 recovery, especially the policies and programs must be care sensitive and gender responsive. So I think the presentation from the study from IDS really complements the presentation from Oxfam, which also emphasize that apart from policies and programmings, we need to transform the social norms related to care. So without further ado, again, I would like to, of course, thank the panelists and then move to the speakers, the third speakers for this session. So again, please apologize if the pronouncing of the name may not be so correct. So I would like to invite Ms. Amy Luinstra, Regional Lead East Asia Pacific Gender and Economic Inclusion from the IFC, International Finance Corporation, to share with us on the private sector engagement with care economy initiatives. You may have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you. And I would like to share a little bit about what the private sector is doing in this sphere of childcare. My name is Amy Luinstra, and I work for the International Finance Corporation, which is part of the World Bank Group. It is part of the bank group that focuses really exclusively, largely, on the private sector. So we do debt and equity finance of about $25 billion a year in emerging markets. We also do advisory program. And a lot of this gender work that I lead for the region sits within that advisory program. It is often targeted specific advisory work with individual companies, but we also like to take on some big problems such as this childcare work that try to provide a strong business case for the private sector to take action on gender equality at work. Of course, as IFC, as part of the World Bank Group, we support the Beijing Platform for Action, we support the SDGs and SDG number 5, but our focus is where gender equality issues intersect with business. And so we've been looking at tackling childcare, and in particular, the business case for employer-supported childcare for the last few years. We have done some studies. We did a flagship study in 2017 that kind of globally addressed this issue. It had a number of case studies. The map you see here indicates where there was a company with a case study in that global publication. And since then, we've done a number of country reports, almost exclusively in Asia Pacific, where we have looked at the business case for employer-supported childcare and specific case studies of what companies are doing. In general, the bottom line of our work to date on this has been that employer-supported care can be good for employers as it is good for working parents, and of course, for children and economies overall. The business case for employer-supported care, however, is very dependent on the particular business and the demographics of the particular set of employees. So one of the big lessons that you will see coming out in this is that individual employers need to be able to assess the needs of their employees as they design family-friendly policies and child care supports. In addition to these country studies, IFC has done practical guides for employer-supported childcare, as well as a specific guideline for employer-supported childcare during COVID. Just to start with some of the basics of the business case, we've done a couple of surveys, one in Fiji and one in Myanmar, of employees of leading private sector companies. And in the case of Fiji, we did the entire public sector as well, just to understand what is it about childcare responsibilities that might impact them at work and how much does it really impact them. And in Fiji, we found that 2/3 of parents were actually concerned about their children's safety while they're at work. Almost all, and these numbers were exactly the same between Fiji and Myanmar, 9 out of 10 parents said that childcare responsibilities somehow impact their work. And for Fiji, we found almost 13 days of work loss due to unreliable childcare or concerns about childcare. In Myanmar, that was even more, 15.5 days lost. And this lost work time is a combination of being late for work, being at work, but not fully concentrating, and being absent for work entirely. When we asked that last question to parents in Myanmar, how many times in the past month have you taken time off work due to care responsibilities? Over half, 53% had taken off at least one day. And then if we ask them to look back and reflect on their careers, what percent of parents had ever quit a job due to childcare responsibilities? So unsurprisingly, it was higher for women than men, but it wasn't zero for men. It was about 26% for women and 13% for men. So it's obvious with our employee surveys that we're missing the whole population that never even got the job because of childcare responsibilities. But this last question about how often you might have quit the job in the past gives you some indication of what kind of impediment childcare can be to having a decent formal sector job in a private sector enterprise. And in fact, research from Vietnam about 1 year ago looked at household surveys and found that women who had access to, in this case, a public preschool, were 41% more likely to have a wage job. That is a stunning correlation. So we do find in our quest as IFC to promote gender equality in the workplace that the single thing that's most likely to prevent women from having a good job is access to childcare. Now, employers are starting to sense there's a business case for them to get involved in filling the gap as well. So in just a couple of examples from Vietnam, we've found some creativity, but also a lot of evidence for our business case with employers who are providing childcare. So one example, the top two pictures here on this slide is from Nowvina. This is a supplier factory, apparel supplier to Mango and Walmart and other brands. They have about 16,500 workers, the vast majority of whom are women. And there, they did not build their own childcare, but they partnered with the government local childcare. They did things like massively invest in upgrading the facilities for this local kindergarten. They invested in technology so that the kindergarten has access to television and computers. They also pay part of the salaries so that the parents of the children here can actually use the kindergartens from 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., which is, of course, closer to the length of the shifts at the factory than a normal public kindergarten would have. Now, Vina has found this to be a very important investment, not just for keeping their workers focused, but for attracting new workers. Vietnam is in the very lucky position right now of still having a growing manufacturing sector. And as companies continue to expand and need more workers, the labor market is really tightening here. And in fact, when we looked at childcare and the business case for childcare in Vietnam specifically, it was a bit different than some of the other countries in which we looked at it, in that the fact that the business driver more often here in Vietnam was about attracting enough new workers to promote themselves as an employer of choice. So Evervan is another factory. This one is an Adidas supplier of footwear. It's got 7,350 workers, and they built their own on-site childcare facility. They noticed that a massive reduction, in fact, half of the worker turnover after they built this facility. In the study in Vietnam, we actually did 6 case studies with factories, all of whom were providing care directly in some way, shape, or form. In some cases, like Nowvina, partnering with local governments, and in others, either building on-site childcare facilities or at their own factory, or sharing with other factories nearby to provide childcare. But of course, that's not the only thing you can do as an employer to support parents with childcare needs. And there's a variety of things that I'll get to in a second. But some of the things that we found when we dug deep into these 6 companies who made the investments to support childcare were very quantifiable business benefits. Attracting top talent being the one that was probably the most universal. It was easier to recruit new workers and a variety of workers with a variety of skills when they had kindergartens in place. Improving retention outcomes. This saved that factory, Evervan, that built their own childcare facility, $537,000 a year. And that's a factory with 7,000 workers, which sounds large. In many contexts, it is large. In Vietnam, it's a medium-sized factory. And $500,000 US a year is quite substantial for that size of a factory. Reducing unplanned absenteeism. Of course, in light manufacturing line work, it is very problematic to have an unplanned absence of any worker. And this is a big problem for productivity. So reducing absenteeism rates at Taekwon Vina, another of our case study companies, this is a tier 1 supplier to Nike, saved them almost $1 million US a year. Achieving productivity gains at Pao Chen, another footwear factory. This one has some plants that are dedicated to serving Adidas and others that are dedicated to making shoes for Nike. At one of their facilities where they have childcare benefits, or childcare provision, they saved almost $500,000 in increased productivity. And they could measure this because they saw what happened before the childcare and they saw what happened after. In some of the other case studies, we had factory groups that had childcare at some locations and did not have childcare at the others. And they saw the difference. And in some cases, an order of 100% magnitude of reducing turnover and reducing absenteeism. In all cases, the companies reported strengthening the relationships with their clients, their lead clients, their buyers. And in many, it also is strengthening their relationships with the local community, potential employees, the local government, as well as, of course, again, their buyers. It doesn't have to be a major capital expenditure on-site childcare. There's a variety of things that employers can do to support working parents. It means more than nurseries. It can be from the lower left hand of this list of things, the lower are the lower resource intensive, to the upper right, where are the more resource intensive. This range of things can all make a difference. And as you've noted, we tried to look at childcare responsibilities and elder care responsibilities. This is an emerging issue, of course, in many ASEAN countries, Vietnam and Thailand being some of the most aging and most rapidly aging populations, where elder care is also taking a toll on female labor force participation. And in some respects, this is a particular concern to employers because women who are older are the ones who are dropping out of the workforce to care for elderly parents and parents-in-law, and women who are older are more likely to be in more specialized senior positions. So this kind of drain from the workforce can have a big impact on the senior levels of businesses, and not just the expertise that those individual women share, but of course the gender balance in leadership at all, which we know from many reports that IFC has done, but also others, is a strong determinant of profitability. So here is, again, just a list of the types of things and the variety of things that companies can do to help employees with care responsibilities. In terms of how governments can help the private sector take more of a role in providing care opportunities for employees and people in general, I think there's at least a couple, and of course, a couple of categories of things, and of course, probably many more things. But one thing that we found is essential is that there needs to be clear policy and standards. So this is, I was mostly talking about employer-supported or corporate childcare, which is when employers either build or find partnerships to provide childcare services to their employees. But of course, there is a whole market of private sector run childcare facilities. And this is something that the government can encourage by making sure there are clear standards, clear policies. If there are curriculum requirements that private sector providers of care and education need to abide, they must also be clear. What percent or proportion of foreign investment can go into early childhood care and education needs to be clear and clearly understood, and from our perspective, not overly restrictive. There needs to be a licensing requirement for daycare. Make sure that it's safe for children, that there are quality standards in place, that there is a regular oversight function as well. And in some countries in East Asia Pacific, we are working with the government on those. And we have, of course, other partners, UNICEF and others are doing the same, and many others. And second is this idea of incentives and facilitating childcare provision. So this would include potential tax benefits to employers who are looking to provide childcare, tax rebates to parents, subsidies for educators and providers of care, facilitating access to land, understanding and making sure that zoning regulations don't prevent responsible employers who want to provide childcare from doing so, and just understanding all of these things, which it is not always clear because you see different categories of regulation across ministries of labor, ministries of education, ministries of foreign direct investment, etc. So having these in a clearly understood and accessible place is actually also quite important. So that's it from me, and I look forward to hearing whether there are questions.
Thank you very much from IFC. Again, this is a very interesting session, especially from us from ASEAN, as we are moving forward with addressing as well as tackling this issue. We have learned from the presentation that apart from being a moral normative framework coined in the language of rights, the providing childcare facility and addressing the needs of working parents is also a business case to improve productivity as well as the team spirit at the workplace. We also appreciate the very concrete example from Vietnam on providing care facilities on site. And we have also heard, apart from the private sector and business sector, what the government can also do, especially when it comes to the fiscal measures as well as incentives for both the business and individuals, parents, to be able to deal with the care work issue. So we still have 15 minutes for this session. So I would like to invite, of course, the next speaker, Madam Christine from the Philippines Commission of Women, ACW Philippines, to take the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Excellencies, our colleagues. We are grateful for this opportunity to share the Philippines' initiative to recognize and value women's vital role in the care economy. Even before the escalation of the COVID-19 pandemic, women and girls globally have already been bearing the heavier burden of unpaid care and domestic work. In the Philippines, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, 2019 report showed that across their life cycle, females spend a disproportionate amount of time on unpaid home production, which includes childcare, elderly care, and housework, while males spend about twice as much time on paid market work. Unpaid care and domestic work, traditionally done by women, is critical to the functioning and well-being of families and societies. Various estimates value women's unpaid work to be worth at least 2 trillion pesos or 40 billion US dollars, roughly 20% of the country's GDP. The PIDS study further outlined potential non-monetary contributions of care work that go beyond financial valuation, such as child schooling outcomes, suggesting how home production activities are actually investments towards a higher quality household. Yet, policymakers have historically overlooked this kind of work, and it has gone unmeasured in official national statistics. The unequal distribution of unpaid care and domestic work affects women's and girls' rights to education, economic participation, as well as rest and leisure activities. It reduces their productivity and increases likelihood of employment in low-paid, part-time, and informal work. Internationally, the value of unpaid care and domestic work has been given more emphasis. The Sustainable Development Goals include SDG Target 5.4 to recognize and value unpaid care and domestic work through the provision of public services, infrastructure, and social protection policies, and the promotion of shared responsibility within the household and the family as nationally appropriate. And at the 19th International Conference of Labor Statisticians in 2013, labor statisticians agreed to begin measuring all types of work, whether paid or unpaid, in labor force surveys, presenting a challenge for national statistical agencies to develop reliable, comparable, and simple measures of unpaid household and care work. Recognizing, reducing, and redistributing unpaid care and domestic work is one of the Philippine government's priorities as part of our commitment to address multiple and intersecting factors that limit women's and girls' rights, to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women and girls, and to promote rights to education and decent work. This commitment is even more important in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has provided both an added burden and a unique opportunity for the care community economy. Firstly, we have worked to recognize and make visible the value of unpaid care work. The Philippines has conducted studies and time use surveys, including early attempts in 1998 and 2007 to incorporate the disaggregated contribution of women and men in national accounts and the value of unpaid home production, although these were not officially adopted as part of the country's system of national accounts. More recently, our commitment to SDG Target 5.4 is translated in the Philippine Development Plan for 2017 to 2022, where generation of data on unpaid care and domestic work is included as a part of the strategy to accelerate human capital development. Our Philippine Statistics Authority is also part of the ILO project on methodological studies to develop new guidelines on the concept of work to measure both paid and unpaid work. The Philippine Commission on Women conducted a survey to assess the immediate effects of COVID-19 on women micro-entrepreneurs through the Great Women Project. Aside from financing, market matching activities, and e-commerce training, the study showed that access to child support services was one of the resources needed by women entrepreneurs to recover from the pandemic. After recognizing the unequal burden of care work on women and girls, we also seek to reduce this burden so they may enjoy equal opportunities in education, economic activity, and other endeavors of their choosing. The Departments of Agriculture and Department of Science and Technology continue to develop innovative equipment and technologies that are responsive to women's needs. The Social Welfare Department's community-driven integrated development social services organizes women and trains them in planning, establishing, and maintaining water systems, which ease women's housework. The Filipino Women's CEO Circle has sponsored scholarships for grandmothers from indigenous cultural communities to be trained in India to put together solar panels as an alternative and renewable source of energy in their remote communities. At the policy level, we have several laws attempting to redistribute unpaid care and domestic work. These laws are first, we have our Family Code of 1987. No, we have I'm sorry, not 1987, but the Family Code of the Philippines provides for rights and obligations of parents. The Republic Act 7192, or the Women in Development and National Building Act of 1992, provides that married persons who devote full time to managing the household and family affairs shall, upon the working spouse's consent, be entitled to voluntary social security at a private or public system and contribution to provident funds. The contributions due can be deducted from the salary of the working spouse. We also have our expanded maternity leave law, which was passed just last year. It provides for up to 105 days of paid maternity leave with an additional extension for solo mothers. There are also proposals to extend the paternity leave from 7 to 30 days. The Magna Carta of Women also included a unique 60-day special leave for women who undergo surgery due to gynecological disorders. Solo parents are also entitled to 7 days leave, and government workers have 3 days of special leaves to attend to family matters such as birthdays, graduation, or attend to funerals. The Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act includes a 10-day paid leave for victim survivors who need to attend to psychological, medical, or legal needs. We also have a law for the total development and protection of children aged 0 to 6 years old by establishing daycare centers in all barangays or villages. The Philippine Commission on Women also encourages government agencies to establish child minding or daycare centers in their offices chargeable to their gender and development budgets. Expanded breastfeeding law mandates public and private agencies to establish lactation stations not only at work but also in public places like markets, bus stations, and train stations and shopping malls. Lastly, in terms of laws, we have passed the Domestic Workers Law, which has transitioned these previously informal workers to formal by providing them health insurance and social security coverage, minimum wages, written contracts, and paid leaves, among others. Other cross-cutting initiatives also contribute to redistributing care work. In our in our educational system, teachers are being trained on gender fair education. Still, gender stereotypes are seen in our textbooks, but these are being addressed through updating of the curriculum. If shared housework is inculcated early in life, unpaid care and domestic work can be redistributed. The conditional cash transfer program led by the Social Welfare Department also includes a condition of attendance to monthly family development sessions where mother beneficiaries learn about gender equality, responsible parenthood, violence in the family, and BAUC, healthy living, relationships between husband and wife, ensuring the health of pregnant wife, HIV, AIDS, and other sexually transmitted infections. Pre-marriage counseling sessions or is a requirement before getting a marriage certificate includes topics on responsible parenthood and family planning. We also have programs focused on the role of men and boys. The Empowerment and Reaffirmation of Parental Abilities is a program of the Department of Social Welfare and Development being implemented by local governments to develop the capacity of fathers to accomplish their roles and responsibilities at home and in the society. The Population Commission also has a program named Men True to Their Responsibility and Obligation to the Family. It focused on men's involvement in responsible parenting, family planning, and reproductive health. The government commits to increase male engagement for the program, which has more than 88,000 participants as of June 2020, including through digital platforms. We would like to highlight that recognizing, reducing, and redistributing the burden of unpaid care and domestic work requires a holistic approach with strong collaboration among government and private stakeholders. Further, we cannot emphasize enough the need for more data to show how the care economy contributes to our economies and to society's development and well-being. We mentioned earlier that the COVID-19 pandemic is both an added burden and a unique opportunity. School closures and lockdown measures have significantly compounded the care and household work performed by women and girls. But there is evidence in some countries that COVID-19 may be prompting men and boys to help out more in the home. We are very pleased to work with Oxfam and UN Women on an upcoming rapid household care survey in the Philippines, which aims to understand and measure the impact of the pandemic on unpaid care and domestic work. We hope to shine a light on women's invisible burden, which has been exacerbated by COVID-19, and ultimately influence response and recovery efforts that are responsive to their needs. While we have a deeply rooted recognition of the unpaid care work of women and girls in the Philippines, we have yet to provide evidence-based policies and programs that will chart coordinated actions among the government, civil society, and private sector in reducing and redistributing unpaid care work. Therefore, we recommend the following: make unpaid care and domestic work visible through research, time use surveys, and other appropriate methods. Strengthen collaboration with relevant government agencies, including national statistics agencies and labor departments, to prioritize valuation of care work. Provide opportunities for women and men to participate in the labor force while performing care work through paid leaves and alternative work arrangements, among others. Involve private stakeholders and civil society, especially women's groups, in crafting initiatives to recognize the care economy. Address the root causes of inequality through education, especially to combat harmful gender stereotypes and gender bias. And lastly, provide a platform for men and boys to expand their roles in family and community building. Building back better after the pandemic must also mean that care work, which society is so dependent upon, does not solely fall on the shoulders of women and girls. We call for stronger political will and concrete action to value women's and girls' time and effort invested in the well-being of each family, household, and community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Christine from ACW Philippines and from PCW for your presentation. We have learned again from the government's perspectives from the Philippines, a very comprehensive both policies, programs, and of course the vision of how we can address unpaid care work through recognizing, reducing, and redistributing, as well as to really engage men and boys through paternity leave, as well as other measures. Also, we again recognize the importance of having statistics and evidence-based analysis to understand the time use that women spend on care work. So we are very grateful to hear from the government perspectives, especially PCW, who is also leading on gender mainstreaming in ASEAN on this matter. So the time for this session is, according to the program, is over, but I think we can still entertain perhaps one question. There's already one question from the chat box from Madame Boots from Aven. I think she raised that isn't it also important for couples to be educated on responsible parenthood to avoid situations of large families which put the burden on women to take care of large brood? Should such program not be incorporated in women's empowerment initiatives? So please allow me to read your question. And I think the question was addressed to Oxfam Philippines. So I would like to invite perhaps Oxfam Philippines to answer this question, and any panelists who would like to share your views before we move on to the next session. Thank you very much.
Yes, totally agree. No, thank you so much, Boots, for that question, and we totally agree on that notion. No, that the responsible parenthood education should also include sexual rights and reproductive health. And in fact, as reported earlier by Christine of PCW, the AirPAT, the Responsible Parenthood Training Program of the government, also cited that particular emphasis to also address that couple decision and discussion on sexual and reproductive health rights. And yes, agree on that. And in our intervention, looking at the care dialogue with the husband, wife, and partners and other members of the family, discussion around how to effectively share the unpaid care work at home, redistribute and reduce the arduousness of that task involves a decision on how the family also, on how many members of the family should there be. And that's basically sexual rights and reproductive health. Yeah.
Thanks for your response, Leah.
Thank you very much. If I may, before we move on to the session 2, I would like to invite if any speakers would like to make the final points before we move on to the next session. Okay, I don't see anyone raising hand, so I think our speakers are very happy with what they have presented and what we have learned from this session. So I would like to then again thank you all the speakers. Questions from the floor. It's a really not only the dialogue, but also a platform for us to reflect, especially as women, but we don't exclude men. We also engage men and boys, just to be clear. So now I would like to hand over the floor to the MC to move on to the session number 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sita, for your excellent moderation of this session. Indeed, recognizing and reducing unpaid care and domestic work will be critical to promote women's economic empowerment. Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move to session 2, Women's Economic Empowerment and Entrepreneurship. The session will discuss trends and successful practices on women entrepreneurship, particularly from a policy and institutional perspective that could inspire women's economic empowerment initiatives in ASEAN countries, including what support is needed to replicate successes. It is now my great pleasure to invite Ms. Sudha Guti, Program Manager of the Catalyzing Women's Entrepreneurship Program of the Social Development Division of SCAP, to moderate the session. Ms. Guti, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Shana. And a very good afternoon to all the distinguished participants and colleagues. I think that was a fascinating session 1 we had. And like most of the speakers have said, I think the issues that we're discussing in session 1 and session 2 are very much intertwined. We've also had several speakers in the previous session emphasize that entrepreneurship is certainly a key pathway for women not only to empower themselves, but also to contribute to an inclusive economy. And we've also heard from the speakers that, yes, there's been considerable progress that's been made in the ASEAN region. We have more than 61 million women-led or operated businesses in the ASEAN region. However, statistics are continuing to show that this has only been the case in some countries, and there are still significant barriers that exist in other countries. Allow me to just share this presentation. So we have spoken about the several barriers that women face when it comes to unpaid care. There were several examples also provided on how we could address concretely some of these issues. There are also social cultural norms, discriminatory practices that continue to exist for women entrepreneurs. And we've also seen that all of these additional barriers really impact women entrepreneurs, especially in contexts like the COVID-19, where this economic shocks multiply for women entrepreneurs. Several studies, including SCAP's recent study on COVID-19 and its impact on women entrepreneurs in Vietnam, for instance, has showed that while the pandemic has created disruption to all MSMEs and all businesses, women in particular have been severely affected. So let me now turn to our very exciting panel for this session, and focus on a range of dimensions, if I may say. So we will be having speakers from different ministries from the ASEAN countries who will focus on the progress that's been made, but also the work that remains to be done when it comes to advancing the women entrepreneur agenda. And we will also hear from the women entrepreneurs themselves through the networks on how is it that we can have more inclusive decision making and hold these processes more accountable. And we'll also have colleagues from the World Bank who'll again hit us with hard data on why this is an important agenda and what needs specific focus. So let me now call upon our first speaker, Her Excellency Kung Sorita. Ms. Sorita is the Undersecretary of State in the Ministry of Women Affairs in Cambodia, and she's also in charge of the Women's Economic Development Ministry. She's an accomplished entrepreneur herself, and she was the first person to actually bring telematic technology known as GPS into the Cambodian market. And she's also won several awards, including the ASEAN Outstanding Award for Women Entrepreneurs. So, Ms. Sorita, if you can focus your presentation on mainly two broad aspects. We'd like to hear really what your government is doing, most recent efforts in advancing the women entrepreneur agenda, and also highlight some specific models, for example, the Women Entrepreneurship Development Center that we are aware of that's being designed in Cambodia to address the barriers that women entrepreneurs face there. Over to you, Ms. Sorita.
Okay, thank you for your floor, and I would like to share you about the slide presentation. Yeah, thanks for giving me a chance to share what the government of Cambodia have done so far, especially Ministry of Women Affairs. Here, overviews. Hello. Hello. Do you hear me?
We can hear you well, Ms. Sorita.
Okay. Sorry. So here, like first of all, I just want to overview about women entrepreneurship in Cambodia first. Yeah, like you see in this slide presentation, we see the number of women who own enterprise is more than 61% compared to the men. The number is higher, and most of them we found that they are just focused more on micro sector only, and also the number why women in Cambodia can focus on the micro business. What is the main challenges in Cambodia? So that's why we can see about the entrepreneurship ecosystem for women entrepreneurs. We have policy, we have finance, we have a challenge with culture, support, human capital, and market as well. It's our challenges, and also women in Cambodia are looking for. Like Cambodian women entrepreneur found the business registration process. I can say it's not really easy. Even we have online platform, but we also have time consuming, costly that we need to spend for registration any business in Cambodia. And at the same time, as a women, we also challenged with the problem, I mean, like access to finance when we don't have enough collateral or don't have any asset that owned by women. And we really restrict on this because I don't know, like what is the main problem, but for sure, if you want to access to any bank or microfinance, you need to have collateral, and you also have husband to insure or to join with those loans. And another one is about lack of leadership. I can say like both hard skill and soft skill. Hard skill in general about entrepreneurship, about human resource, about marketing, especially digital marketing right now. And for the soft skill, lacking of communication, negotiation, leadership skill is part of challenges of women, and they are really need this kind of program to support. And another thing is about a lower level of market networking and build capacity building as well. Like why they also challenge, because as a woman we challenge a lot of things, and we have a social norm that sometimes it's not easy for women to connect with with outsider, especially the men who run a business. And most of them, because of the business, they are small, they are micro, so they don't have any proper bookkeeper, or they don't have accountant, they are specialists, so they really lack of practical knowledge on this. Is the reasons that we also develop some policy and some program for the women as well. And the last one is about role of women, because they have two roles, so woman business owner and also house maker, to ensure that they go smoothly. So all these things is the challenge that Cambodian women are facing, and I'm not sure not just only in Cambodia, maybe other Asian country as well, but here I can share what we are challenging. At the same time, we also have government initiative in Cambodia to develop women entrepreneur as well. Like you can see about core policy measure, have digital, have financial literacy, how to collect voice, or especially during COVID-19 and post-COVID. Maybe back to core policy measure. Right now, we also have some new policy that we are developing, especially government of Cambodia. First, I mean like online registration form that it's make the business owner, entrepreneur, they have more easier compared to the last time. I mean like the both women and women also can access or can register online easily. And right now we also have SME policy that also support and women. Ministry of Women Affairs also part of this policy, because we want to ensure that it will be this policy will be get a benefit for the women, especially SME. And for digital work, right now we just launched Ministry of Commerce. They just launched e-commerce platform that also work for entrepreneur in Cambodia as well. But we are not, have any specific things that includes women entrepreneur. I mean, like it's just in general, and we also have more programs that stress on e-learning or online training that support women as well. So it's about financial literacy. Yeah, for Ministry of Women Affairs and also partner with National Bank of Cambodia that have fund support from visa company, also initiate one program that is called financial literacy, that we provide financial background to the provincial, especially for the micro startup in the province, as we also have our own women development center in the province in Cambodia. And at the same time, because we see about the challenge, both micro and SME, include UNSCAP, also work with NBC, also develop two applications for bookkeeping app, that one focus more on microfinance, for micro, and another bookkeeping application it's have for SME. And another one is about collecting voice, how we collect the voice for women to increase participants for private sector. And recently, Ministry of Women Affairs just launched one networking that is called Cambodia Women Entrepreneurship Network, in short, like CAMBON. It's the purpose to form up to create a big voice for the women, especially for women entrepreneurs from other or from more than 5 associations in Cambodia, to ensure that we can work together, we can bring one voice for Cambodia for local presentation and also international stage as well. For the COVID-19 countermeasure, I can say for this government of Cambodia work very hard to support Cambodian people during the crisis from COVID-19. And especially, we also have some support that government just released, and we also have some program that support poor people, poor family, and vulnerable family as well. The programs such as cash support for the sector most effective, and also social cash transfer for women's micro that is called entrepreneurship, and another one a special financial theme. And we also create, like the government of Cambodia create SME bank to support SME, especially during COVID-19. And we also have special loan for women entrepreneurs in Cambodia during this crisis as well. This during COVID-19, but for the planning, Ministry of Women Affairs also have plannings about, like develop entrepreneurship development center that is called WEDC. For this center, that is like you mentioned, because we have our existing buildings already. So the main objective that we create this center because we want to use that building with effectively, and especially it's beneficial to Cambodian women entrepreneur. And the reason that we develop, because we want to build capacity of the women. We also promote women in leadership and bring more networking and market for Cambodian women entrepreneurs as well. Here for the operating methodology, I can say because it's our first experience as a Ministry of Women Affairs that never done it before. For the center, we also want to apply for 3 public-private partnership. So because we have our own buildings already, we plan to work or cooperate partnership with private sector, and it can be have many private sector that can join. Mostly they are from association that we also have some partnership already that we can get from Cambodia that have more than five associations that work with us. So we just want to hope that this center can have and can train more women entrepreneurs and work with effectively. And at the same time, like I mentioned, that because our Ministry of Women Affairs also have many development center from other provinces already. So it's time that we can connect from the province to the city in Phnom Penh city to ensure that women development center from the province also can use the facility and get training from women entrepreneurship development center in the Phnom Penh as well. And here I would like to share you about ecosystem approach for in the center that I mentioned. We have 4 main core activity. Actually, we have more than 4, but here I just want to focus just only for 4 activity. 1, we will provide training and development for young and for the women entrepreneur. And second, we provide incubation and accelerator program as well to give like a guideline and also mentoring to ensure that when they get training, they also can have opportunity to learn and to get training or coaching from our trainer. And at the same time, we also have a research and knowledge hub that support more, and we can do more research. And we also have library. We also have a lab for women entrepreneur or young women who want to learn more about entrepreneurship. They can go to the center, and they also can do more research from our center as well. For the last one, collective space, because we also focus more on the co-working space, we ensure that for the young startup, they will difficult to rent the big building or need to expand more for the rental. So in the building, we also provide space for them as well with they also I can say like we cooperate price that we can help, and we work with our donor to ensure that the center will be benefit for the young and for the women entrepreneur in Cambodia. For this, I just want to connect that as you know about the problem, about challenges of Cambodian women entrepreneur in Cambodia already. So that's why we bring the center to merge with what's the challenge and what's the Cambodian women entrepreneur need. So I will not mention again. I just want to show here about the challenge of the women. And the last point, for the last slide, I just want to raise what the Deputy Prime Minister and also Minister of Economic of Finance he also mentioned about women as well, especially during the ASEAN Women Leaders Summit for last month. We just want to ensure that we support and we encourage women. We do as much as for Cambodian women to ensure that they can survive during this crisis. And for later on, we will empowering and we also promote more gender equality, especially promote empowering women in Cambodia. To let them work more better and have a sustainable business after COVID. Yeah, thanks for my presentation for this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sarita. It's very interesting to also note that the government of Cambodia is addressing this from various perspectives, the barriers that women face. Notably, we took note that you're also introducing a new online registration platform, which will ease one of the biggest issues that women face in the micro and informal sector on registering their businesses, and also will help the rural women entrepreneurs for this. We also note that the entrepreneurship development training center that you're establishing is truly a partnership-based approach, where you're bringing in existing incubator models, collective spaces to address also the gaps that women face in terms of networking and enhancing their skills. This also, we note that particularly the rural women entrepreneurs in Cambodia will benefit through this approach, and we look forward to hearing the progress. We're also very pleased to collaborate with you through our existing initiatives of ESCAP in Cambodia. We will take questions towards the end. So I will now move to our next speaker, Ms. Trinh Thi Huang, who is the Director of Policy and General Affairs Division, Agency of Enterprise Development, Ministry of Planning and Investment in Vietnam. Ms. Huang is also wearing a dual hat today, and she's also representing the ACME, the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on MSMEs. Ms. Huang has worked as a policymaker in enterprise development for over 15 years, and she's contributed to several legal frameworks that support SME development. Her other areas of interest also includes overall sustainable development and gender equality. She's also an accomplished researcher and a dear partner of ESCAP through our various initiatives. Ms. Huang, if you can focus in your presentation on a few aspects. First, with respect to Vietnam, could you tell us a little bit about what is it that you're doing as part of the lead SME ministry in the country to address some of the barriers that women MSMEs face? And also, we know that most recently you've addressed some of the specific psychosocial barriers that have compounded, which existed even before the pandemic, but they've actually compounded during the pandemic. So if you could highlight a few examples, and also if you could share a few good practices from the ASEAN region in terms of promoting a better policy environment, wearing your hat of ACME as well, please. Over to you, Ms. Huang.
Okay, thank you very much, Sulta. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, let me express my sincere thanks to the ASEAN Committee on Women and the UNESCAP for giving me a precious chance to participate in this very meaningful event today. As you may know, that Vietnam has made a great effort to advancing the gender equality and economic empowerment of all women and girls, particularly for the women-led MSMEs. As the focal point of the MSME support agency in Vietnam, today I would like to share with you what we have been implementing to promote an ecosystem for the women entrepreneurs. Let me share my screen now. Sorry. Yes. To promote the ecosystem for the women entrepreneurs, we focus on three main pillars. First, to enhance the policy environment for that can facilitate the women MSMEs. And secondly, we promote business support services to support the women SME. And thirdly, we focused on capacity building for the women-led MSMEs. Sorry. Yes. In terms of enhancing the policy environment, recently we cooperate with several partners to implement some very important activities. As you may know that in 2017, Vietnam has issued the law on support the small and medium enterprises. And in this law, we already regulate that the government will give the priorities support the women-led SMEs. And until now, so after nearly 3 years implementing this law, we will cooperate with SCAP under the project CEW to evaluate the law, how the government already implement the policy that support the women MSME, so that we can see the gap between the policy and the implementation, so we can enhance the effectiveness of that law. And besides that, we also cooperate with ADB and UN Women to evaluate and to assess the framework on women SMEs, not only focus on the access to credit, but we also focus on several areas such as labor in the labor regulations that impact on the women and SMEs. And it's very important, you know, that during the COVID-19 pandemic, the MSMEs, particularly the women-led MSMEs, affected strongly by the COVID-19. So it's very important. We already cooperate with SCAP to conduct a research to assess the impact of the COVID-19 on MSME, and especially the women-led MSME in Vietnam. And through this research, we already see many useful recommendations, the policy recommendation that can help us to improve our policy and can issue timely the measures that can support the women-led MSME in Vietnam. And besides that, you can see that the climate change now become very seriously, and we see the very important role of the women and the women-led SMEs with the climate change and also the inclusive business. The women MSMEs that in Vietnam can create many works for the women, especially in the rural and in the remote area. So the women and SME with the climate changes and inclusive business is one of the priorities of the Vietnamese government. So we will cooperate with SCAP under the project CW to conduct several activities. And the first, the initial action will be organized in this December. It's a sub-national consultation workshop with the women-led MSME in the Mekong Deltas, the regions affected strongly by the climate change, and the women there in that areas also plays a very important role in inclusive issues. And another initiatives that we already initiate and also cooperate with ADB under the project WAVE. We are now cooperate to design and also to conduct the research to design and to set up the Women SMEs White Book in Vietnam. It will be a very comprehensive picture on the women SMEs, not only about the facts and figures, not only about the situation of the women SME in Vietnam, but also evaluate the challenges, the barriers, the opportunities of the women SMEs to develop further, and also evaluate the policies of the government, and recommend for the future action that can promote and to empower the economic empowerment of the women SMEs in Vietnam. And last but not least, another activities very important is we cooperate with ADB to develop the national database on the women and women SME in Vietnam. It is the first national database which we will develop from the economics census in the 2021. And in the second pillars, we focus on the business support services. Recently, MPI ADD as a focal point of the SME support. We are designing a digital one-stop platform for the women entrepreneurship ecosystem in the website. It is a sub portal of the national portal for the SME. So you can this platform will be launched in this December. Hopefully, middle of December, we can launch this digital one-stop shop platform. In this platform, we will provide the online investor connection, business consultant network, as well as the policy update for the women SMEs. Especially, we will create an online psychology self-care corner for the women MSME, and we create e-learning platform and develop training models for the women MSMEs, and to implement this initiatives, we cooperate very closely with SCAP, UN Women, and GIZ. Besides the digital one-stop shop platform, we also cooperate with the Ministry of Science, Ministry of Industry and Trade, particularly the Digital and E-commerce Center, and the SCAP to conduct several training on the channel on the e-commerce for the women need MSMEs to deal with the COVID-19 impact and to utilize the benefit and the advantage of the e-commerce to be resilient and to develop in this pandemic context. And in the third pillar, MPI already cooperate strongly with several partners, as well as we also spend our state budget to improve the capacity of the women SME through the training program. We provide the online training courses, and also we provide the online training through the e-learning platform with the training modules, especially for the women-led MSMEs. We also develop the SME care tool for the women SMEs. It means that the women SMEs can use this online toolkit to evaluate their business weaknesses and strengths, and they can see what they should improve through this toolkit. And it is free and online for the women. So the women SME, particularly who in the remote area and rural area, they can use it very convenient. And when we already implement, we conduct the pilot implementation, we already receive very positive feedback from the women and SME. They said that it's very useful for them to see how their business, what are their weaknesses, so they can improve their business. And yeah, as Suha mentioned, that recently we focused to implement some initiatives to reduce the psychological barriers of the women entrepreneurs. As you know that in the COVID-19 context, the women themselves already cope up with many challenges, but now they have to face the additional pressure from responsible for the aging population as well as the unwell family members. But now they have to cope with the more serious stress from the COVID-19. So that's why as the focal point of the SME support, we see that we need to do something urgently to help them to reduce the psychological social barriers. So we already co-op with SCAP and other private partner like Kids Startup and they are the expert in terms of the psychology to conduct a series, a talk show, online series talk show. We call it Happy Lunch for the women-led SMEs. And until now, we already conducted 3 talk shows. The first one is to recognize the stress and how to manage it. And the second talk show about how to balance the work and life. And the third one is psychology application in business management and leadership development. And besides to conduct the talk show series, we also developed the online psychology self-care corners for the women. In that corner, we provide the online stress evaluation tools, online basic stress consultancy, and we set up the connections between the women SMEs and also the experts who can help them to deal with the psychology issues. This is one part of the digital one-stop shop platform for the women-led SMEs. And that's some points I would like to share with you about what Vietnam have been doing to promote an ecosystem for the women entrepreneurs. And I do hope that if you have any question, we can discuss later. And now, as Sutha has said that because I am also the members of the ASEAN Coordination Committee of the SME development. So today I'm very happy and also honored to represent the ACC MSMEs to share some good practices from the ASEAN members. We already set up, we already cooperate with each other, and we already achieve in past few years. So Sutha, can you give me the detailed question about what you expect me to share with the forum today?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Huang. We would also like to know, as part of the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on MSMEs, what are some of the initiatives that are the good practices that are happening in the ASEAN region, particularly in the context of the ASEAN Strategic Action Plan 2016-2025 for MSMEs? And within that action plan, what are some of the good practices to advance women-led MSMEs in the region? Briefly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Sutha. Yeah, the ACCM SMEs, we already cooperate with the OECD to conduct research on that, and we already have the publication strengthening women entrepreneurship in ASEAN, and towards increasing women participation in economic activities. So there are some policies improvements done by the ASEAN members. So I can share with you very briefly about it. The first one is the ASEAN members already improved the level of the gender inclusiveness in national MSME development strategy, and their awareness of the potential economic gains from the ensuring greater participation of women in the various support programs and services. For example, the government of Malaysia, the Philippines, and the Thailand already adopted the gender responsive budgeting. And the second, ASEAN members ensure alignment of the MSME's policy and measures with relevant strategic priority laid out in the National Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Strategy and Action Plan. And it may require closer linkages between the ministry responsible for the women affairs and ministry responsible for MSME development, and a more effective implementation of the gender mainstreaming in the MSME policy and measures. And thirdly, ASEAN members developed a system for collection and comprehensive reporting of the aggregated data of the MSME's ownership, including the gender analysis of the characteristic of the MSMEs and their performance in order to better inform the policy development. For example, in 2011, Cambodia already did a comprehensive gender analysis in its economic census. And in Vietnam, in next year, as I shared with you in my previous presentation, that we also develop a national database of the women SME from gender mainstreaming in our economic census in 2021. And the third point, the fourth point is member ASEAN members appoint an inter-ministerial committee with the private sector representation to oversee the production of the national women entrepreneurs development strategy to call a high-level attention to specific quantitative targets, policy, and programs. Fifth, the ASEAN members to appoint an advisory committee or establish a mechanism on women's entrepreneurship development, such as the Women Business Council, to advise the government on the appropriate policies for the women SMEs. And the sixth is to establish a clear focal point for the women entrepreneurship development inside the government to improve the leadership and the coordination. And the last but not least is to establish a network of the women enterprises centers in the country. As my colleagues from the Cambodia already said, that in Cambodia also have a center for the women enterprises. Yeah, that's some main points I would like to share with the forums about the ASEAN members already done to promote a better policy environment for the women-led MSMEs.
Thank you very much, Ms. Huang. And in fact, first, I must congratulate you and your ministry for really being a champion for advancing women's empowerment while being an SME ministry. I think this is a clear departure from the traditional roles expected and the future really of working together on advancing this agenda. And I think you've also taken us directly into the world of solutions for women entrepreneurs, looking at all aspects of the ecosystem, from psychosocial barriers, looking at solutions as part of your newly about to be launched digital sub-portal, bringing all partners at the country level together to address these challenges. I think is really commendable. Also, we're pleased to note that there are several initiatives that are ongoing at the ASEAN level, whether it comes to gender responsive budgeting, setting up interministerial committees, I think cross-agency collaboration, which are all key milestones in the ASEAN Strategic Action Plan 2016-2025. So I think it's very heartening to note the progress that's being made and the work that still remains, also especially given the context of the pandemic. Thank you very much for that. And I will now turn to our next speaker, our dear colleague from World Bank, Ms. Marina Elefante, who's working with the World Bank's Women, Business and Law team in Washington, D.C. She specializes in legal discrimination based issues affecting women's employment and has also worked on various legislations, including with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime in the past. Ms. Marina, if you can highlight in your presentation some key statistics coming out especially from your recently published report, Women, Business and Law 2020, and also telling us in the context of the ASEAN, the 10 countries that we are focusing on today, what is the progress that's been made in terms of looking at laws and regulations that impact women's economic inclusion? And what's the work that's still remaining to be done? So over to you, Ms. Marina.
Yes, thank you very much, Sudha, and good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to be here and to be able to present the World Bank's project that I work for, Women, Business and the Law. For the past 10 years at Women, Business and the Law, we have been investigating this one question, and that is, how does the law affect a woman's economic participation and a woman's working life? And we do that through the use of 8 indicators that allow us to analyze laws and regulations affecting women's employment and entrepreneurship in 190 economies. These indicators are mobility, which examines constraints on freedom of movement; workplace, which analyzes laws affecting women's decision to work, including discrimination in employment and sexual harassment; pay, which measures laws and regulations affecting women's pay, including equal remuneration for work of equal value and specific job restrictions; marriage, which assesses legal constraints related to marriage, including domestic violence; parenthood, which examines laws affecting women's work after having children. So issues such as maternity and paternity leave and dismissal after pregnancy. Entrepreneurship, which analyzes constraints on women starting and running businesses. Assets, which looks at gender differences in property and inheritance. And pension, which assesses laws affecting the size of a woman's pension. So what we have consistently found over the years is that gender equality in the law is smart economics. We make a strong economic case for laws that are equal, for laws that empower women. And what we mean by that is that equal opportunity in the law is not just a wise social policy, it is also a smart economic policy. Research shows that when men and women have equal opportunities in the law, which is exemplified by a higher score in our index, female labor force participation is higher, female entrepreneurship is higher, the wage gap between men and women is lower, and positive development outcomes ensue. And it's important to make the economic case because mostly we want to appeal to governments to reform those laws that hold women back. And that's just common sense, because if half the population is not able to fully participate in the economy, a country is not really able to reach its full potential. So our annual report publishes an index which is made of 35 binary questions that have a close correlation with women's economic empowerment and are scored across the 8 indicators. So countries receive a score for each indicator and globally, with 100 representing the highest score. And the most astonishing finding in the latest edition of our report, the 2020 report, is that women have just 3/4 of the legal rights of men in the areas that we analyze. So the global average score is 75.2. And looking closely at the ASEAN region, the region falls a little bit behind the global average with an average regional score of 71. And here you have the scores at the country level, with Laos being the top performer. But I also want to give you a few details about the findings in the region in terms of key strengths and areas of improvement. This is a region that performs really well in the areas of mobility, entrepreneurship, and assets. And this is a trend that we have observed over time because we have a panel of 50 years of data, which shows that in 1970, the average regional score was 44. That means that over the past 50 years, the ASEAN countries have adopted reforms toward gender equality and gained 26.5 points overall. However, there are some areas of improvement, especially in the parenthood indicator, the pension indicator, and also in the areas of access to finance, to credit, as I will show you in a moment. We have also observed a couple of reforms in the time frame that the 2020 report covers, which goes from June 7, 2017 until September 1st, 2019. Philippines and Thailand have passed reforms toward gender equality, and more specifically, the Philippines have increased the length of paid maternity leave from 60 to 105 days. And Thailand has passed legislation mandating equal remuneration for work of equal value. And going into further details about the topic of this panel, under the entrepreneurship indicator, this region performs really well with a score of 85. we have 4 economies, Cambodia, Laos, the Philippines, and Vietnam, which receive a score of 100. It means that the laws that we analyze under this indicator are equal for men and women. Plus all the 10 economies in the region allow a woman to sign a contract, open a bank account, and register a business in the same way as a man. This means that women are not required to provide additional information or documentation, as it is the case in some countries worldwide. For example, women might be required to provide the husband's name or his signature or a marriage certificate or to have the permission of a male guardian. However, despite the good performance under this indicator, we do find some constraints to women entrepreneurship, particularly in terms of access to credit. Under our entrepreneurship indicator, we look at whether the law prohibits gender-based discrimination in access to credit. And we find that this is not prohibited in Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, and Thailand. However, this means that in the other 4 economies in the region, this is prohibited. And I wanted to give you a couple of good practices from the region. The main approaches that are followed are two different ones. We have Cambodia and Laos, which specifically prohibit discrimination in the provision of services, including financial services, when it is based on a person's sex. And this prohibition is included in the criminal code and provides criminal penalties. The other approach is the one that's followed by the Philippines and Vietnam, which specifically guarantee that women have the right to borrow and obtain credit in the same way and under the same conditions as men. And the other kind of constraint to entrepreneurship in the area of access to credit that we find relates to property rights. Because weak property rights can hinder a woman's capacity to obtain credit, because they may constitute a barrier for a woman to provide collateral for a loan. And access to formal credit relies a lot on asset-based lending. So this is why we look at this specific issue under our assets indicator. We analyze laws related to property and inheritance. And in the region, we find that in Brunei, Indonesia, and Malaysia, women do not have equal inheritance rights with men. In the Philippines, women and men do not have equal ownership rights over immovable property. And by that, we mean immovable matrimonial property, because in case of disagreement, the husband's opinion prevails. And in Myanmar, the law does not provide for valuation of non-monetary contributions. And going back to our first panel about unpaid care, with this question, what we look at is the distribution of assets between husband and wife upon divorce. And we look at whether the law mandates an evaluation of non-monetary contribution in terms of unpaid care when dividing assets upon divorce. So I hope that these details, that these areas of strengths and areas of improvement will be useful for you. We put this data out with the purpose in mind, which is for the data to be useful and to be used. And this audience, I mean, you have the power of transforming our work, which is theoretical by nature, into practice. You may use our data to identify good practices and the type of legislation and regulatory environment that works for women. You can make the case that investing in gender equality in the law is good for the economies, smart economics. And you can use this data to make an informed decision about policy reforms and legislative reform. This region performs already really well in terms of gender equality in the law, and I am confident that if these reform trends continue, we will see even better outcome in terms of economic opportunities for women. So for that purpose, I would encourage you to visit our website, wbl.worldbank.org, where you can find all the editions of our reports, download our data, and have access to country-specific information through our economy snapshots, which will give you an overview of a country performance in terms of the scores at the indicator level, areas of improvement, reform trends, and also the full set of legal basis for our answers. And with that, I thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this very interesting forum, and I look forward to a very rich discussion afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marina. I think that was really a very interesting presentation. A lot to cover in the short period that was provided, but you've brilliantly managed to highlight the key issues. It was particularly very interesting to see and how telling the WBL index was, the Women Business Law Index was, and also highlighting the priority areas that probably need further research in some countries, but also in some countries where there's already enough data to make decisions. And we also note that one of the biggest constraints in the ASEAN region remain with discriminatory laws when it comes to access to credit. And is also that just 4 economies in the region prohibit discrimination and access to credit based on gender, I think was quite telling. It was also interesting that you highlighted examples where countries have managed to address these in their provisions. What we will also need to look at is, while these progressive provisions have been made in the laws, how effective is the implementation? And is it actually helping women address the barriers that women face when it comes to economic inclusion? So thank you very much once again. And I will now turn to our next speaker, Ms. Ma Aurora Joaquina Garcinia, who's the Philippines Women Entrepreneur Network Chairman, also fondly referred to as Ms. Boots Garcia. Ms. Boots leads the Philippine Women's Economic Network and also chairs several others, such as the Philippine Business Coalition. She is also a recipient of several awards and was also recently recognized as the ASEAN Women Entrepreneur. Ms. Boots Garcia, the floor is yours now. If you can also highlight a little bit in your presentation on really the experiences in creating an enabling environment for women entrepreneurs to participate. And we speak a lot about inclusiveness and participation, and how is it that this is actually being advanced in the ASEAN region? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you also for the opportunity to speak today and to share on behalf of the ASEAN Women Entrepreneurs Network. Christine, please. May I have the next slide, please? Okay, a bit of, just a little bit of history. 25 years ago, more than 30,000 women and representatives from 180 nations in the world set a path-breaking agenda and unanimously pushed for and adopted the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. This historic blueprint articulated a vision of gender equality, freedom, and opportunities for women everywhere, no matter what their circumstances. 25 years hence, where are we now? We all agree that women's economic empowerment is now recognized and pushed as a driver of ASEAN economic growth and resilience. If women, who constitute more than half of the population of the ASEAN region, are well equipped to participate in the workforce and in the marketplace, the region's growth and development would be unparalleled. However, as we are celebrating a quarter century anniversary for gender equality, the pandemic has further exposed and deepened the pre-existing inequalities and vulnerabilities of women in social, political, and most especially economic systems. Women bear the burden doubly hard as they are expected to fill both employment or business obligations and household duties. Businesses owned or led by women entrepreneurs lack the resilience due to access to finance and market opportunities. The ASEAN Women Entrepreneurs Network, or AWEN, was actually formed prior in 2014 and has been serving as a network of business women in the region and as a platform to encourage knowledge and experience in promoting economic and trade activities that enhance gender equality, strengthen entrepreneurship skills of women, and create favorable ecosystems for female-led and owned enterprises. While under the socio-cultural pillar of ASEAN, as we are actually a daughter of, if I may say so, of the ASEAN Committee on Women, AWEN seeks to bridge itself to the other ASEAN pillars as women's empowerment issues are cross-cutting concerns and are also to be found under the political and economic pillars. From that point of view, AWEN, as well as PhilWen, which is a member of AWEN, made it our life's work to create an environment where women-owned and women enterprises thrive and succeed. So how are we doing this and planning to do it? We have organized quarterly forums or meetings to share information and experiences in efficient operating models, national and regional policies, and procedures concerning trade, customs, and registration of businesses and investments. AWEN also provides capacity building workshops for women business leaders. We study and make policy recommendations in the region to help support women entrepreneurs and help find projects or ideas for women in the region. Just last month, in fact, in November 9, AWEN hosted the ASEAN Women CEOs Summit, where women entrepreneurs gave valuable insights to policymakers on how to best address their concerns during the COVID-19 pandemic. AWEN likewise honors extraordinary women who are leading examples of innovative businesses, no matter how big or small, by allowing them or bestowing upon them the ASEAN Women Entrepreneur Awards. And since we started this award in 2015 till last year, we did not have an award this year in 2020, we have bestowed this recognition to close to 500 women in the region, allowing them to become role models for other women entrepreneurs to also aspire for this award. To further enhance gender equality and women entrepreneurship in the ASEAN region, AWEN also launched its own core policy advocacies. In 2017, when the Philippines hosted the ASEAN Women's Business Conference, there was the adoption, a milestone in that the conference was the adoption of the action agenda on women's economic empowerment. This action agenda aims to bolster women's empowerment through innovation, trade and industry, and inclusive business, and human capital development by encouraging ASEAN member states to carry out actions in support of the agenda. And in November of the same year, the action agenda was adopted by all ASEAN leaders. Specifically, AWEN invited all member states to support women in accessing markets through assistance in digitalization efforts, providing financial literacy and discipline, education, and increasing access to reskilling or upskilling modules for women in the workforce and for women who wish to participate in the marketplace by establishing their own enterprises. AWEN likewise signifies its priorities in promoting sustainability and self-sufficient for all micro and small, medium and small-sized enterprises, empower women leadership in the international arena, and enhance information sharing for gender information in ASEAN. Just recently, we also bolstered our efforts in providing or in promoting the action agenda through a project supported by Oxfam, where we intend with the objective of operationalizing women's economic empowerment in the region by conducting a gender gap analysis on ASEAN's institutions and regulatory frameworks and providing for mechanisms in order to have a gender normative ASEAN leader framework as already described as well by our previous speaker. More importantly, AWEN is also making relevant efforts in providing women entrepreneurs additional support to adapt to the new normal caused by the unprecedented spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. AWEN is continually pushing for the disaggregation of data in the ASEAN Statistical Yearbook in order to provide for in-depth information for women participating in the workforce as well as in the marketplace in order to provide insightful and relevant fallacies that improve on their welfare. AWEN also calls for increased and pertinent representation in relevant bodies, for example, ACSME, SIOM, to ensure a gender lens perspective in regional policy drafting, as this is the only way to ensure a sustainable, inclusive COVID-19 response in the ASEAN Women's Work Plan. Increased monitoring and enforcement of the targets listed in the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, is imperative also in order to ensure that women are not left behind when it comes to the enjoyment of social, political, and economic rights. In implementing a gender COVID MSU response, there is a need to create an environment where enterprises and families support and practice equal sharing of care work to ease the double burden of women who work from home and who work for the home. Policy crafting and support programs with a gendered perspective will go a long way in empowering women. I'd just like to cite some examples that we've seen in addition to what has been mentioned already by our previous speakers. In Vietnam, we were informed that UN Women and of course UNICEF work with the Ministry of Labor, Invalids and Social Affairs in developing codes of conduct and safeguarding measures for women and children in quarantine centers set up as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. In Malaysia, we have the example of the Child Care Center Act, providing for standard and regulations for childcare, and recently provided a subsidy of ringgit 250 per month for each child who is sent to a private registered childcare center for parents with a per capita income below ringgit 500, depending on whether they're in the urban, suburban, or rural areas. And childcare coupled with a reskilling program by the government truly lifts the women's double burden and allows for gender utilization of female talent in the workforce and for the returnees who have left. In the Philippines, we have a project entitled Inclusive Lending for Aspiring Women Entrepreneurs, or ELAW, which translated in English means light, which truly promotes illumination for women-owned and women-led businesses. The Development Bank of the Philippines, which is a government institution, provides a dedicated loan facility to women where traditional financing has failed to include them. And also in line with the efforts of the Philippine government to rebuild and expedite the recovery process in severely stricken areas or calamity-stricken areas, this same bank launched the Rehabilitation Support Program on 7 events, or rather severe events or response to provide credit assistance for rehabilitation. Similar to the recommendations for assistance to MSMEs in the shift to digitalization, a gender response needs to be crafted in order to bridge the digital divide between women workers and entrepreneurs vis-a-vis their male counterparts, who are more likely to be retained when routine labor is automated or have access to financing to withstand the downturn in demand. Resources need to be allocated to women who will be displaced either as retrenched employees or returning overseas workers by providing them with entrepreneurship training or reskilling and upskilling. There must also be a gender balance or access to programs on financial literacy and funds for women-owned businesses to access where traditional funding has failed them. The ASEAN Summit on COVID-19 ended with a call to act jointly and decisively to control the spread of the disease while mitigating the adverse impact on our people's livelihoods, our societies and economies, and concluded with leaving no one behind. I submit that women must not be left behind, and we hope that the ASEAN economic community reflects on these recommendations and consider the strategies for governments and businesses in the region. Thank you very much for your attention, and good evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Boots. I know that there was a lot of valuable information in there, and because of the time constraint, we couldn't really go into the details, but it was very interesting to hear how the ASEAN Women Entrepreneur Network is not only interacting with the various ASEAN mechanisms to advance the women entrepreneur agenda, but is also really driving strongly the implementation of the action agenda on women's economic empowerment that was adopted. So that's very good. And particularly, I think it was interesting to see the examples in the context of COVID-19 and also reiterating and re-emphasizing some of the recommendations that we've heard from speakers in session 1 and session 2. So thank you very much. And indeed, leaving no one behind is the motto. And that takes me very nicely to our last but very valuable speaker. Let me make sure I pronounce her name properly. Miss Madam Saulak Tong Huai.
Yes.
Good evening. And Madam Saulak is the representative of the Network of Experts on Inclusive Entrepreneurship for ASEAN, and also a very passionate advocate for the rights of persons with disabilities in various areas. Madam Saulak, if you could highlight in your presentation also some of the initiatives that the network NIEA is taking in building capacities of vulnerable women, in particular vulnerable women entrepreneurs, and how you're also trying to strengthen the cooperation amongst different stakeholders in the ASEAN region. Over to you.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask if you could see my presentation? Hello?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet, but I think it's coming on.
Okay. New chair. Let me. Is on?
We are only able to see the folders on your screen, but not the presentation.
Okay, let me try it again. Did you see it?
Yes, we can see it now. Thank you.
Okay. So let me start. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I would like to thank the organizer to extend the invitation to the Network of Experts on Inclusive Entrepreneurs for ASEAN with this very unique network to promote the entrepreneurship for persons with disability and other vulnerable groups. Let me go on the next slide. What happened? Okay, next. Okay, before I going into the details of the network and its good practices in ASEAN country, may I invite everyone to celebrate the International Day of Persons with Disability on the 3rd of December is today. The theme of this year is Building Back Better towards a disability inclusive, accessible, and sustainable post-COVID-19 world. which is the themes of the International Day, the 3rd of December, is really, in line with our online discussion today. So many people ask me and our network that why persons with disability has to focus on business, why we have to talk about business. The first one is, because disability inclusion makes a good business sense. What is the business sense? Like the inclusions, the disability inclusions make a good teamwork, diversity, a good teamwork among diversity, and also create a competitive, quality competitive marketing, and also fulfill a global respects and regulations, and also make a strong but very unique marketing brand. But for persons with disability and other vulnerable groups, business, the real business create the new paradigm shift from being a recipient to be the real consumers, and also create economic independence, and also, bring us to be able to create our living style choices, and also reduce the disability gap like gender or age and etc. And also good for the government itself. Firstly, to reduce financial burdens in terms of, social welfare and other charity supports, and also increasing GDP and quality human capitals, and also create a sustainable development. Sorry. And then what is the network of experts on inclusive entrepreneurs? Actually, it's set up and adopted by ASEAN Commissions on Women and Children. The purpose of the network is to be the platform that promotes the inclusive development, and also promote the participations of persons with disability and other vulnerable groups in society, and support the growth of social entrepreneurship among ASEAN member states. The major objectives of the network is to provide a platform for ASEAN member states, government officials, private sector representatives, focusing on social enterprise, disabled people organizations, vulnerable groups, and other stakeholders to exchange views, knowledge, and implementation mechanisms on inclusive entrepreneurship through the development of social entrepreneurship programs, and address the human rights and empowerment needs among persons with disability and other vulnerable groups, and in addition to pursue the research and development efforts towards business and entrepreneurship. The composition of the networks. The networks composed of the government ministers and departments, the Chamber of Commerce, the other agency focusing on persons with disability and other vulnerable groups, private sector organizations, associations engaged in inclusive entrepreneurship and social enterprise development, and also include civil societies, organizations, and also other vulnerable groups and organizations, and academics and think tanks organizations. And the last or the fourth meetings was held online on October 22nd in Hanoi, with the major theme is to promote the inclusions of the entrepreneurships towards a cohesive and responsive ASEAN communities hosted by Vietnam. The results from the online meetings is that 30 members of the networks reported that all of them contributes to promote the in social enterprise owned by persons with disability, and they share information among society and also among ASEAN member states. The let me check the slide. Actually the network compositions is really unique to create a strong, a strong point that the network include the Thai Chamber of Commerce and also include the other organizations engaged in businesses and entrepreneurships and social enterprise to fill in the weaknesses from the disabled people, organization, and other vulnerable group that we know that persons with disability or women with disability and vulnerable communities focus on advocacy. So they have a really, comprehensive skill on advocacy and human rights. But all of the almost 100% of them lack the business skills and also business idea and how to make their productions and also the business analysis. So therefore the platform with the member, especially the Thai Chamber of Commerce, one would like to fill in such, the gap between business and vulnerable people and persons with disabilities. So therefore, they make, they run the mini MBA programs to promote entrepreneurs with disability, to empower persons with disability and vulnerable persons to be entrepreneur by themselves, to own their business. So starting in the module from the first year in 2018, focusing on business skill development, and also the follow-up by the business networks in 2019. From the skill development, vulnerable people and persons with disability, especially women with disability who are willing to run their own business. They have basic knowledge and skill on businesses and business idea like product demand, how to design package, how to how to deal with the digital platform, and also how to make the personal branding or targeted the customer. But they are still working among themselves and they lack of the business or engage with the business firms and organizations. So from the skill, persons with disability organization and the members, let them and take them to network with the business organization and network that some of them includes myself, has an opportunity to engage with ASEAN Women Entrepreneur Network and some of its members when they held the network meetings in Bangkok last year to share the idea among members. And also through the ASEAN Disability Forum, the ASEAN Disability Forums to promote persons with disability and also empower them to be the entrepreneur and run their own business by connecting them with the business firms in their own countries. And the last one is also encourage persons, women with disability to start up their own business. From pictures, you can see that females, blind women, run her own business. She just, show their products today on the International Days of Persons with Disability this mornings. So they get the idea how to contact with the business sector and how to create their own product and how to differentiate their products to open more marketing opportunities. And also the next slide, this is from my own business that I learned from the market. I learned the marketing skills from the mini MBA, and then exchange the idea through the business and network last year. So I myself try out my own business plan and on food and beverage caterings, and also try out to make my own packaging with its difference with other package and to create the marketing opportunities. And then during COVID-19, organizations of persons with disability work very hard with the business sectors, especially Chamber of Commerce, to maintain, personal hygiene of the employee with disability, and also educating employee with and without disability how to prevent the spread of the infections and ensure that employees with disability and without disability have enough, and sufficient facility to wash their hands properly and regularly with soap and water. And also the significance network contribution is to distribute hand sanitizers and alcohol gel and surgical masks to vulnerable community while the spread right now in while the COVID-19 pandemic is in a serious spread of its infections. From the work of ASEAN network of expert of entrepreneur is also implement and complement to ASEAN Enabling Master Plan 2025, mainstreaming the rights of persons with disability. And that the master plan, the enabling master plans, identify the priority areas and key action points to continue the implementations of the Bali declarations and mobilization framework toward the enhancing the implementations of the conventions on the rights of persons with disability. That they met the priority areas, key actions points are specific in the recognitions of the importance of the inclusions of persons with disability in political, legal, economic, social, and cultural environment and full realizations of their rights. Both Bali declarations on enhancements, laws, and participations of persons with disability and ASEAN Enabling Master Plan 2025 build on the Human Rights Treaty and also Incheon strategy make the right deal for persons with disability in Asia Pacific regions, and also in line with sustainable development goal. This that we think that this is our opportunity to enhance entrepreneurship with disability. And also the other opportunity is about the regulation. In Thailand, there is a Social Enterprise Act which cover businesses, foundations, associations, and other organizations and instrumental to social goals such as community development and solving social issues, addressing environment problems, and bridging the gap in income inequality. For the condition for the forming a social enterprise, really stick to at least 4 points. That the social enterprise must have the goal, which is addressing community developments and environments and social issue, and 70% of the profits needs to be reinvested, and revolving fund to support social enterprise, social entrepreneurs. And then if the business does not,
Madam Saulak, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are running a little late, and if we can conclude in the next 5 minutes, please. Sorry for that.
Yes, I have a few slides. Sorry, this is the last presentation. I think it is my my right to end my presentation accordingly. So if the business firms declare themselves as a social enterprise without the permission, they have the penalty according to the law. So the key successes to promote the inclusive entrepreneurships, entrepreneurships or entrepreneur with disability, and to promote the entrepreneur within vulnerable group is to break down major barriers. I think many presenters already talking about and highlighting the barriers like access to capital or investment or access to credit. So no persons with disability, especially women with disability, always, facing the refusals of accessing to the credit and investment loans or access to information relevant to business, international standard, law, regulations, and other procedure regarding to the business and the marketing. The barriers toward disability, like attitudinal barrier, the societal always, perceive that person with disability cannot own their business, cannot run their business. So that's why CSR is the first, highlight to promote employability and income generation toward disability and vulnerables, and also physically barriers like how to go out of their home. So accessibility on public transportations or any educational system, and also access to ICT and assistive devices and assistive technologies, and also systematic barrier. So these barrier we need to break down if we want to succeed the inclusive entrepreneurship by and for persons with disability and other vulnerable persons. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your attention, and thank you everyone for your attention. Please.
Thank you, Madam Saulak. And I think that was a very interesting presentation and a lot of information there, not to mention timely also that this is coming in on the International Day of Disability. Also, thank you for highlighting the role of NIEA as a network and raising awareness and pushing for concrete actions. Several good examples that you brought to the table, including addressing capacity development with the mini MBA, addressing the skill gaps for persons with disabilities, particularly women entrepreneurs, your work around COVID-19 and helping break down the barriers that persons with disabilities, particularly women entrepreneurs, face. I think we wish we had more time to discuss really some of the details of this, but unfortunately we have to conclude the session. Before I can thank you once again very much, and before we conclude the session, we are just looking at the questions that have come in, and we have time to take one question. So if I can turn to the previous speaker, Ms. Marina Elefante from World Bank. One of the questions from our member states, Brunei, delegate from Brunei, is you mentioned Brunei and Malaysia score 0 in parenthood in one of your slides. If you can clarify and explain a little bit there, Marina, thank you.
Yes, of course. And thank you very much for this question, because it really gives me the opportunity to explain better how scores are assigned. Specifically, the parenthood indicator is composed of 5 binary questions that trigger a yes or no answer. And a score of 1 is assigned to every yes answer, and a score of 0 is assigned to every no answer. And then indicator level scores are obtained by calculating the unweighted average of the questions within the indicator and then scaling the result to 100. So specifically under this indicator, we have 5 questions. We ask whether paid maternity leave of 14 weeks is available. And we ask this specific question because we examine whether the legal framework is in compliance with the International Labour Organization, the ILO standard, which is established by the Maternity Protection Convention number 183 of 2000. And for Brunei, we find that under the Employment Amendment Order of 2012, the length of paid maternity leave is 91 days, which amounts to 13 weeks. This is why this triggers a no answer and a score of 0. The other questions that we ask are whether the government administers 100% of maternity leave benefits. And for Brunei, we find that under the maternity leave order 211, the answer is no, that's not the case. We also, the other 3 questions are whether there's paid leave available to fathers, whether there is paid parental leave, and whether the law prohibits the dismissal of working mothers. And the answer to all these questions is no, meaning that we don't find any applicable provisions. And this is why, in the end, the score under this indicator is 0. And I hope this clarifies your doubts. And also, our answers are based on surveys and questionnaires that we administer to lawyers in the field. But we also ask governments to submit any data updates that they might have through a portal that is active during the data collection phase of our report cycle. So if you please, if you do have any additional information, I would encourage you to contact us, and this would greatly help our research, and we will be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marina. And if there are any follow-up questions, we will be in touch with you directly to answer it later. Thanks again, once again, to all of the speakers on this session who brought in a wealth of knowledge. And what was very interesting in both the sessions was really that the focus was on solutions and good practices, but also highlighting very constructively the work that remains to be done in the ASEAN region, especially in the second session from both ministries, the gender ministries, as well as the SME ministries, representatives of Women Entrepreneur Network, NIEA, World Bank, as well as of the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on MSMEs. So we will have a very thorough summary of the entire session, which will be shared over a report in due course. And I would like to now hand it back to our dear MC, Shana, for further deliberations.
Thank you so much, Sudha, for your wonderful moderation of this session. Indeed, analyzing the barriers and opportunities for promoting women's economic empowerment, in fact, lie at the center of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. And catalyzing women's entrepreneurship is certainly key to unlocking the promises and breaking down barriers in this regard. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, we have now reached the final session of this meeting. Now, this session on the way forward will commence with a short discussion on key outcomes and conclusions of the meeting, facilitated by the Asian Secretariat. It's therefore my pleasure to invite our dear colleague, Dr. Sita Somrit from the Asian Secretariat, to facilitate the first segment of this session, please. Dr. Sita, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Shane. For this session, we will focus on the way forward and practical recommendations from this web forum. Of course, any other points apart from, next slide please, apart from the points that we highlight here will be included in the report from the web forum. So I would like to bring your attention to the recommendations from the web forum here. And again, we would like to highlight that the recommendations are based on a practical way forward and the possible collaboration between ASEAN and SCAP. So the first one is to develop policy guidelines for ASEAN countries to effectively address and reduce the unpaid care work carried out by women and girls with the support of SCAP. And second enhancing cooperation of ACW members with ministries, agencies responsible for SME development, and explore collaboration with and support from SCAP in this regard. So for the point number 2, of course, is to also encourage the cross-sectoral, even cross-pillar collaboration within ASEAN with the support from SCAP. The third point is supporting development of policy guidelines to ensure the needs of women entrepreneurs are addressed through specific provisions in MSME policies and regulations in the ASEAN region. So again, this is a very important part of the action agenda on women's economic empowerment in ASEAN, as well as on gender mainstreaming in the context of economic integration. Fourth point is promoting good practices in creating enabling environments for women's entrepreneurship at high level policy dialogue in 2021 or 2022. This is to ensure that the momentum at the high level policy commitments and strategic directions will continue throughout the next year and the year after, at least. Last one, to heighten participation of women and girls and their organizations as active partners and agent of change in advancing gender equality and women's empowerment. So this point again reflects that we look at women not as problems, but the solutions and agent of change in addressing and advancing women's economic empowerment agenda, along with the unpaid care and domestic work. So these are the recommendations gathered from both sides. I would like to then hand over the floor to UNSCAP. Economic empowerment agenda, along with the unpaid care and domestic work. So these are the recommendations gathered from both sides. I would like to then hand over the floor to UNSCAP.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sita. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, before moving this session to a close, we would like to take
empowerment agenda, along with the unpaid care and domestic work. So these are the recommendations gathered from both sides. I would like to then hand over the floor to UNSCAP.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sita. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, before moving this session to a close, we would like to take
empowerment agenda, along with the unpaid care and domestic work. So these are the recommendations gathered from both sides. I would like to then hand over the floor to UNSCAP.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sita. Distinguished participants,
recommendations gathered.
We apologize for this technical glitch. We had wanted to share the QR code for our electronic evaluation questionnaire, but this seems to be posing some problems. My colleague Casey from the Asian Secretariat will share the link to the evaluation now in the chat box, and it will take no longer than 3 minutes to complete. And we will just give you a couple of minutes now to please click on the link and complete the evaluation form. And we thank you in advance for your support on this. We will come back in 2 or 3 minutes. Dear participants, thank you very much for completing the questionnaire. If you did not have a chance to finish it now, please do so immediately following the conclusion of this meeting. Thank you very much. It is now my great pleasure to invite Her Excellency Haja Noor Ashikin Binti Haji Johari, Permanent Secretary, Community and Culture of the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports of Brunei Darussalam, and Chair of the Asian Committee on Women, to deliver her closing remarks. Madam Chair, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kaveh Zahedi, Deputy Executive Secretary, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, His Excellency Kong Fuk, Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN for ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community, representatives of the ASEAN Community on Women, representatives of other ASEAN sectoral bodies, representatives of ASEAN Women Entrepreneur Network, representatives of ASEAN Coordinating Committee on MSMEs, representatives of Network of Experts on Inclusive Entrepreneurship for ASEAN, representatives from development partner organizations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I'm truly delighted that we have come to the end of this forum with high hopes in that we will continue to work together in achieving our common vision for women and girls in ASEAN. I wish to extend my deepest gratitude, first and foremost, to UNESCAP for their strong commitment to advance gender equality and women's empowerment through organizing this landmark activity. The ACW is grateful in being able to co-organize this forum with you. I also thank my fellow ACW focal points and representatives for demonstrating once again the indispensable role of the ASEAN Committee on Women in leading the policy directions in advancing gender equality through women entrepreneurship and by addressing unpaid care and domestic work moving forward. My appreciation as well to all the speakers and participants from the ACW, UNESCAP, Oxfam World Bank Group, and from EXME, AWEN, representatives of Network of Experts on Inclusive Entrepreneurship for ASEAN and the ASEAN member states. Your contributions to the forum and your staunch commitment and readiness to further strengthen collaboration with the ACW in realizing the full potential of women and girls in ASEAN is truly valued. In this forum, we have been reminded that women and girls in the region need full access to opportunities that will help them thrive and actively participate in building their economic livelihoods and independence. Therefore, we need to tackle the widening gender gap and discrimination in the world of work and care economy, which are exacerbated by the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. We were also inspired by the stories of change, hope, and aspirations from the efforts of different stakeholders, from the public and private sectors, who remain steadfast in innovating solutions and implementing pivotal actions to uplift the economic well-being of most vulnerable women and girls in ASEAN through investments on policy and program development and capacity building initiatives on gender mainstreaming, particularly on digital and financial inclusion. Truly, the marks of the pandemic are leaving us with more work to do and more tasks to accomplish in the days ahead. But we will carry on headstrong with our learnings from these adversities, making us even more resilient as an individual, as a community, and as ASEAN. For the ASEAN Committee on Women, we will ensure that the next ACW Work Plan 2021 to 2025 is anchored to key strategic results and outcomes that will advance economic empowerment and decent work of all women in the workplace, marketplace, communities, and in the digital space, guided by the aim of gender equality as well as economic and social justice for all women and girls. To UNESCAP and other partners, I look forward to our continuous conversation to follow through actions on the recommendations and way forward from this forum. In closing, please allow me to also thank the ASEAN Secretariat for providing valuable support to this web forum and for its continued assistance to the work of ACW. With this, I conclude my remarks. Thank you once again for your participation.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your commitment and your strong leadership as Chair of the Asian Committee on Women. It is now our pleasure to invite Dr. Srinivas Tata, the Director of Social Development Division at ESCAP, to please deliver his closing remarks. Dr. Tata, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's really my privilege to extend my warm gratitude to all participants for being with us today at this web forum and for engaging in the critical conversations that I'm sure all of us have thoroughly enjoyed. My special thanks to you, Madam Chair of the ASEAN Committee on Women, for your wonderful statement and also your personal commitment towards empowerment of women and towards especially focusing on key issues for addressing economic empowerment of women in ASEAN. I would like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to the ASEAN Committee on Women and the ASEAN Secretariat for partnering with us to make this web forum such a resounding success. You know, the recommendations, when they were read out by my friend Ms. Sita, were really music to my ears, because the very clear path and guidelines that were set out in terms of providing clear guidance on how we are going to engage with the ASEAN Secretariat and ACW in moving this process forward, and gives us a very clear template for our work in the coming year, in fact, for the coming years looking ahead. We will definitely, as you have indicated, Madam Permanent Secretary, that we will definitely have follow-up conversations with both ACW as well as the ASEAN Secretariat, as well as the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on SMEs, with which we're also working in order to bring this work together. During this web forum, we have also seen participants share very good practices from several countries in the region. Many of you have national action plans and strategies. At the same time, we have reminded ourselves and each other that there's a lot of work ahead of us. You have not shied away from identifying gaps, and you have not rested on your laurels. Very clearly, there is a lot of work that we have to do together, especially by integrating a multi-sectoral approach and integrating different perspectives from all levels, from small women's saving groups to national governments to involving sub-regional and regional actors. One of the key takeaways from this web forum for me has been the need to emphasize regional cooperation and partnerships, and especially of the kind that was highlighted in the recommendations. Our distinguished speakers also shared innovative initiatives at national level and most profoundly reflected on how we can advance in solidarity to put women front and center, not only in the context of COVID-19, but actually looking much beyond. So I cannot stress enough the importance of recognizing, reducing, and redistributing care work. We know that this has a very direct relation to enhancing if our recognition of the care work, unpaid care work being put in by women in our region is essential if we are going to promote increase women's labor force participation and kind of contribute to the economic empowerment of women. Unless we recognize the both are inextricably linked. And I'm really grateful and I'm happy that this forum addressed both these issues together. I would like to thank our member states, civil society organizations, and many other stakeholders that contributed to the Beijing Plus 25 Asia Pacific Declaration. And going forward, we will continue to bring together member states, private sector, civil society, and other development partners to implement the Beijing Plus 25 Declaration. So amid the tragedy of this pandemic, there are reasons for hope. And this crisis has created an urgency to build back better. And therefore, we must work on this head on. And we look forward to working with our partners in ASEAN as well as ASEAN member states to take this forward and working side by side. I think this can be an exemplary example of how UN and internationally and regional organizations and member states work together to advance this very important agenda. Thank you very much once again for a most interesting forum. Thank you very much. Shana, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tata, for your insightful concluding remarks. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, this marks the end of the Web Forum on Enhancing Women's Economic Empowerment in ASEAN Countries. We thank you for your active participation and we wish you all the best. Take care and stay safe, and see you soon again in this virtual space.